I'm Tim Brown, Chairman of the Budget Committee. As a tradition I've started in House Ways and Means, let's just pause for a moment to reflect on the day. Thank you. This is the Indiana State Budget Committee. Again, I'm Tim Brown, House District 41, Crawfordsville, Indiana. Formerly the largest Tippecanoe County representative, but no longer that way after redistricting. Chairing this committee, I'd like to start, we'll go down to my left with introduction of members and then right, and then we'll have a few words from Mr. Sullivan and acknowledge other people in the room that I want to acknowledge. So, Senator Kenley.
Luke Kenley, District 20, State Senate Appropriations Chair from Noblesville. Thank you.
David Reynolds, Fiscal Analyst for the Senate Majority Caucus.
Ryan Mishler, Senate District 9, Elkhart, Marshall, Kosciuszko, and St. Joe counties.
Krista Rivera, I'm a fiscal analyst in the Senate Majority Caucus.
John Groden, State Senator, St. Joseph County, South Bend.
Susan Crumble, fiscal analyst for the Senate Democrat Caucus.
Deanna Owari, State Budget Agency.
Zach Jackson, State Budget Agency.
To my right.
David Dukes, fiscal analyst for the House Republicans.
Brian Bailey, Budget Director for Governor Pence.
Bob Cherry, State Representative from Greenfield.
Ben Tooley, House Republican Fiscal Analyst.
Sheila Klinker, District 27, part of West Lafayette and Lafayette.
Eric Gonzalez, House Democrat Fiscal Analyst.
Terry Gooden, State Representative, District 66 from Austin.
Jim Landers with the Legislative Services Agency.
Thank you very much. Also want to recognize in the audience Senator Hirschman represents a large part of this area. Welcome, thank you. And also Micah Vincent, who is OMB Director, fairly new position, but has been in state government and very knowledgeable. And watching his first budget committee live, probably has listened to us being streamed in the past. So at this time, I want to turn it over to Mr. Sullivan of Purdue for welcoming comments.
For Purdue. Once again, I'd like to welcome you to Purdue. We're excited to have you here and show off our beautiful campus. I'm relatively new to this position, having been here now about 15 months. So I don't want to overstay my welcome, but I wanted to give you a little anecdotal story. I retired in 2012 after 36 years in corporate work, the last 5 of which I had been chief financial officer for a company called Prologis, which is the largest owner of warehouses in the world. In the spring of 2014, after about 20 months and 175 rounds of golf, as a type A personality, I was itching to do something more. At the height of the polar vortex in February, March of that year, Purdue reached out to me unexpectedly and hit me at a weak moment. And so I joined Purdue in June of 2014 and was immediately introduced to the biennial budget process. To say I was drinking from a fire hose is an understatement. However, that first year here was a great learning experience, and in the end, things all worked out pretty well. When I left Prologis, my retirement gift was a guitar signed by the Rolling Stones. The connection being that as CFO, I was the money guy. People would have to come to me to ask for money or relief on administrative overhead charges, etc. And my constant refrain, as it was with my children when they were growing up, came from an old Rolling Stones song, which is, you can't always get what you want. But if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. So finally, with this biennial process, I was on the receiving end of my favorite refrain. Seriously, though, with your help, Purdue did just fine. We were on the receiving end of a $3 million line item request for Purdue Polytechnic, a huge boost to one of the most significant of the Purdue moves. We received needed state aid and support for our new Ag Life Sciences building and we're able to save substantial dollars by pursuing both Phase 1 and Phase 2 together. And we were fortunate to be allocated $12.5 million in incremental R&R money for our regional campuses. Thank you for your help with these initiatives, as well as all the other state support we receive. And one final note, I hope you had the opportunity to drive by our new Honors College, which is under construction. This is our first CM passed in 2014. This procurement process helped us to save substantial costs, somewhere over $20 million. And future projects, including Ag Life Sciences, will have similar benefits. Thank you and welcome to Purdue.
Thank you. Thank you. Did I get voice activate? Thank you. Thank you. There. Okay. Mine is in biological science, not technical science. Thank you very much. Purdue's been very friendly, very welcoming, and very informative to see people involved in over 50 new startup companies at Purdue Foundry, and then some of those things going on to fruition at the research park. So, and we got to see jet engines and things like that for the future. So, very exciting here. Again, the meeting has been called to order. The minutes of the last meeting have been distributed. Are there any amendments to the minutes? There's a motion for approval. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded for approval of the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. There's a proposed agenda has been distributed to all members and released to the public. Are there any amendments or corrections to that agenda? Senator Kenley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 3 on the agency projects, I would like to move that we move that item to a discussion item under Article 5 of the discussion items today. And the reason being that this item is one that involves the security of the State House. It involves not only the executive branch, but the judiciary and the legislative branch as well. And this is going to be a pretty major undertaking, and I think the administration actually, Mr. Chair, has worked for some time to try to be prepared for where we're going on this. But I think we need perhaps to do a little more vetting with the other branches that occupy the building on a regular basis to make sure before we begin to allocate funds to this that we're all kind of in agreement on what we need for this. So I would like for the committee to consider perhaps moving that to a discussion item today.
Is there a second to that motion?
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded and move item 3 of the agenda and agency projects to discussion item. We'll make it number 1 discussion item. Is there any further discussion at the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The proposed agenda is placed on the table for discussion then at this time. Thank you. We'll start then with agency projects. And first we have Adjutant General Carr. This is the live microphone with the red light. If the red light isn't on, there is a button because we are being streamed out for people who don't want to travel to this wonderful city. So thank you. Thank you, General Carr. Pleasure to have you here in your first capacity as new position before the Budget Committee.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. So we start. Well, thank you all very much. I've got John Bailey, our State Controller, and John Dunning, our Facilities Manager, to talk about 5 projects to re-roof 5 of our armories. And I will tell you that this team does an incredible job getting the life out of our facilities. These roofs are 22 to 30 plus years old. Outside their expected lifespan, and so good projects, and I would like to turn this over to John. Is that not?
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, this is a request for $894,313.
Can you hit it again? I think it, there you go.
There you go, that's it.
Sorry.
That's okay.
This is a request for $894,313 from state capital appropriations. As the general said, it is to re-roof 5 armories throughout the state: Martinsville, Shelbyville, Elkhart, Monticello, and Winchester. The federal government will also be participating in this project with equal funding if the committee here so approves the project. The roofs will, as the general said, are beyond their normal lifespan. We are proposing to replace the roof system, although it is not part of the calculations. By replacing these roofs, not only will we extend the life cycle of the facilities, but we will also save some monies on energy savings through installation of new insulation as well. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Any questions for General Carr or others? Is this about the same amount of match that the federal government has done in the past on these projects?
Yes, sir. On maintenance and repair of our armory facilities, the federal government does assist with reimbursement of 50% of the funds.
Okay. Do you anticipate going forward how the federal government will view these? Not thinking even next year, but I guess looking 5 years or 10 years. Is there any feeling you get in talking with people in the Federal Defense Department how state matches will be looked at?
So our armories are from 50-50 match to 75 federal, 25 and 100% federal. So it depends on the facility what that match percentage is, and that's a fixed percentage. It won't change. The way that we get money allocated from the federal government for facilities is based on a annual report that we provide on the service level or the maintenance level of the facilities. And based on their needed repair, that goes into an algorithm and a calculation, and we're allocated a certain amount of money for maintenance and repair of facilities. And then John's team manages that based on those facilities that have the greatest need, consistent with our state budget, to make sure that we have the match available, and then which ones are, potential of creating more problems if we don't fix them and more repair.
Senator Kenley.
So just as a follow-on to that, thank you, Mr. Chair. Is it your annual plan that you see how much you have available for match, and then you try to use the match money as much as possible, assuming that with the number of facilities we have here in Indiana, you're going to probably need to max that out every year, or do you leave money on the table based on the fact that you don't have enough budget from the state to use for match money?
Well, I would say, I would phrase it different from not having enough money from the state. We take our state budget,
Okay.
And then maximize that with the facilities that need the greatest amount of maintenance. And, basically looking at the 50% matches and the 75s and the 100s, where we can maximize the amount of federal dollars in those facilities that require the greatest amount of maintenance. So there's always more federal money, not always, but generally speaking, there's more federal money, but we're able to take the state money and maximize that match. And going forward, we're taking a look at that model of what we need, but that's how we do it.
Well, thank you, and that's kind of, Dr. Brown's question kind of leads me to think about, I wonder if we should have a discussion about this when you submit your budget in advance of the 2-year cycle, because if you can determine what your needs are at that time for the next 2 years, and if you know you have an unlimited federal 50% match, you may need to make a different request at the state level, or and vice versa. So it's a sort of a measurement that, and based on what Dr. Brown's pointing out about the fact that we have a match program, seems like we ought to be planning ahead based on what our true needs are out there first. But then, how do you make sure that we take advantage of the federal dollars to the best extent possible?
We greatly appreciate that, and we'll work very closely with Mr. Hill and the budget director to work through that in preparation for the next budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Yes, Representative Goodman.
Thank you for having my attention.
Hey, just.
Are you in another zip code down there?
I am, yeah. Yeah, the music's still playing down here too. Thanks for being here, guys. One quick question. As you move forward, is there any talk of consolidating any of those armories or closing any of those down? I know I've been to a couple of them, specifically in my area, and at some point they're going to need some pretty significant TLC, not just rehab, TLC.
So this is, yes, sir, thank you for the question. This is a big balancing act because the National Guard is a community-based organization, and our strength is derived from our community involvement. Our recruiting base is our communities, and so we feel it's important to be out in the communities, both from our responsiveness to support Hoosiers and the support we receive back. On the flip side, we are more efficient with our new armories than some of them that are 50-plus years old. So there is a plan, a strategic plan that would take a look in what we have, basically a priority list of those armories that we would want to consolidate if we would get the federal funding for construction. And that is, right now, Indiana has been very fortunate in the federal military construction budget, $360 some odd over the last 5 or 6 years. We've gotten more than the share than the rest of the states, we're happy to say. On the downside of that is that the National Guard Bureau that helps prioritize those projects has seen that we've been the beneficiary of a lot of military construction, and so we're a little farther down the list. But we do have some projects that would consolidate some of our older facilities that need a greater amount of repair, and our older facilities to maintain and less efficient. And so there are some plans that we have over the next probably 15 years that we're looking at should we be able to get the military construction dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming and presenting.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you.
This time we'll go on to the next agency project, the War Memorials, and also Department of Administration. Mr. Larison.
Good morning. I appreciate the committee's time for allowing me this time to talk about the War Memorial Project. The Indiana War Memorial Commission is requesting funding for a roof replacement and repair project at the Indiana War Memorial located in downtown Indianapolis. It is located at the south end of American Legion Mall. It is if you are not aware, it's a very large limestone building constructed in the 1930s. It houses a museum, administrative offices, meeting rooms, and a shrine room dedicated originally to the veterans of the First World War and later utilized for all subsequent war or veteran activities since then. The roof is a ziggurat roof, which means that it steps up, and it's about 200 feet up in the air. It is currently beyond its lifespan as installed back in the 1930s. We are starting to get water leaks through the roof and into the spaces below, causing damage to very detailed and ornate plasterwork. The funding would provide us with the opportunity to hire a consultant that specializes in waterproofing and then conduct the repairs themselves in the spring.
Any questions for Mr. Larison? Thank you. And I believe the next item, we move down to the discussion item, so
I
we'll
look
take it up
forward
at
to
that.
it.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we'll go to item number 4, Department of Corrections, Mr. Warren. Thank you. Great to see you, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the committee. The Department of Correction has 2 projects for your consideration today. The first project is at our Putnamville Correctional Facility in Putnam County, Indiana. We house 2,200 medium security adult male offenders there. They're housed primarily in 4 two-story housing units built between 85 and 92. The windows in these dormitories were typical of the installation, of the era of that installation. They were a single-paned window. Energy conservation at that time wasn't high on the priority list. The windows have two issues. The quality of the windows that were installed was subpar, and they installed the windows where the offenders had ready access to those windows. The windows have not fared well over the lifetime. So we looked to solve both of these problems before we ever come in front of the committee to talk to you about replacement. Director Taylor, who accompanied me here today, led a crew to design, engineer, and install security screens over those, modular security screens of good a design as you'll find anywhere in the country to protect the windows from offender damage. We looked at length to find a window that would, in our business, windows are a big concern with as many properties as we have. We did a lot of in-depth research on the windows we wanted to install. A couple years ago, we approached you with this very same project. We installed about 1,300 windows at our correctional industrial facility in Pendleton as a test bed. Not one window has been damaged to date. They're a better quality window, a high R value window. We're confident that this replacement will take care of these through the remaining lifespan of these buildings, which is many, many, many years to come. There's 539 windows total in this project. The only particular thing of note on this project is that we'll use offender labor to remove the old windows. Every component will be recycled. The offenders, we did this at CIF as once again as a test. It worked wonderfully. It saved us about half the cost of the new installation, and it gives us a good sustainable product for the rest of the life of the building.
Any questions for Kevin on item number 4? Thank you.
The next item, sir, this was actually Senator Kinley's idea. When I appeared before the committee last month, we talked about our reception diagnostic center and where our population was at. On the drive home, myself and some of my working group started thinking about, we'd moved a lot of projects where right now we have about 280, we're down about 280 offenders in our reception diagnostic center, which is a central building, a multi-security level building where we organize all of our offenders in Hendricks County. We had moved a bunch of things that Senator and I were talking about. We had moved up a bunch of projects, taking advantage of those open cells to do some pretty severe preventive maintenance. We went in, sandblasted some of the cells, shower refinishing, all the normal wear and tear stuff that we deal with inside a prison. We had moved all those projects and had them underway, and we're going to accomplish them this year. After that discussion, we went back and we started looking further. We looked at the one project that we had planned, that we had remaining in that facility's master plan, which was replacement of the locking devices in the ranges. It makes sense that if you're going to replace the locking devices in the ranges, the most cost-effective and time-effective way to do that is with no offenders on the ranges. We went back, pulled that project out that we originally had scheduled for next fiscal year, dusted it off, negotiated with the contractor, reduced the cost by about $50,000 because he can do his job quicker and easier. It also dovetailed perfectly into a project he's doing for the Indiana Finance Authority at our Wabash Valley facility, where they'll have some downtime. So it just worked perfectly on all facets. The project replaces all the doors, all the things you see in a typical correctional facility, the door, drives, and slide units and the locks that have been in service since 1971 when the building was built. Repair parts are no longer available. They have to be machined. This replaces all of them with the standardized control units that we use from one end of the state to the other. And with your approval, we plan on accomplishing this project by the end of October.
Any questions, comment? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We next go to item number 6, Department of Natural Resources, Mr. Smith. Good to see you, Mike.
I heard I missed a nice dinner last night in the football end. I would have loved to have been there. Before we get to the project, Mr. Chairman, I would like to briefly update you.
What?
There we go. Before I get to the projects, I'd again like to briefly update you on the flooding around the state park system. Through August 12th, our department has had to cancel and/or refund over 4,000 campground and cabin reservations, resulting in a reduction of revenue of about $670,000. Several beaches still remain closed, and Mississinewa Lake is the only campground presently that is still closed. We are currently in the cleanup mode. We are experiencing an algae ring around several properties, similar to a bathtub ring, quite honestly. And those exist after the floodwaters have dissipated, and we're in the cleanup mode right now.
Along that line, the algae or fungus on the grass, do you think that's going to be an erosion problem with some of our reservoirs and waterways?
Possibly. We have reached out to both Homeland Security and FEMA to discuss those very issues.
Okay.
Back to the projects. DNR is requesting an allocation of $210,000 to supplement $200,000 of federal money for the removal of the Fawn River Dam located in Steuben County, about 10 miles west of Angola. This dam was originally built in 1910 and until recently served as the water source for the Fawn River State Fish Hatchery. It is rated in poor condition, and recent site visits indicate that it continues to deteriorate. A water well has been installed at the hatchery to replace the water supply.
Any questions? Thank you.
Resource management, we're requesting $680,000 for resource management, which addresses invasive species and environmental diseases to include kudzu, gypsy moth, timber stand improvements, and prescribed wildfire burns. This money will be spread over 4 divisions and numerous properties within DNR.
Any questions from committee? Thank you.
We're also requesting $275,000 in supplemental design engineering services within DNR where specialized design training is necessary. DNR has identified approximately 30 projects where some level of specialized expertise will be necessary to complete the project. The specialized areas of expertise include structural and geotechnical design work.
Any questions, members, committee? Thank you.
Yep.
I also presume you'll be following up Natural Resource Summer Study Committee or interim committee about, the state of the parks, and as we go forward for the next year or even into the next budget, what we need to do because of the flooding and water this year. So
Absolutely.
continue to be updated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to item number 9, Mr. Brown.
Good morning. I'll be doing presentations for both School for the Blind and School for the Deaf. School for the Blind is requesting funding for Phase 2 of our tuck pointing project at the facility. This would be for what we call the quad buildings, which are buildings A, B, C, and D. The records that I find show that it's been over 50 years ago since this work was done. I can tell you that the last project that we did, the first phase, when I talked to the committee about all the rain infiltration and water infiltration we had, with all the rain that we've had this summer, we've not seen one drop of water in any classroom or any hallway. So it has taken really good care, and this is just a continuation of that project to get the other set of quads done and make that waterproof as well, and then we can go back in and start making repairs on flooring and walls and everything that we have left.
Senator Kinley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief question, Carl. Do you know, tell us where the School for the Blind is located and approximately, do you know approximately how many acres of ground you have up there?
We have about 64 acres. It's north of Park Tudor on North College Avenue.
Okay. And are you the only occupants on the grounds?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Thank you. Continue on.
Okay. For School for the Deaf, we're requesting funding to demo an old building called Simpson Hall. I've only been there 3 years, but I know that this building was shut down in the early 80s. The earliest records I can find was 1984, 1985. That was after the new dormitory was built in 1980, 81, and they moved into that and abandoned the building. All utilities were cut off, so it's not had any type of heat, any type of water into the building. It is collapsing down around itself. We had a tour a couple of weeks ago with DNR and IDOA, and we had just left an area, and a part of the ceiling came down in an area that we were just in. So the roof has collapsed in on itself. Floors have collapsed in on itself. It's a very unsafe building. And what I would like to do is have that demoed, and then the area where the building is at, we would make into a parking area, not only for our use, but for State Fair too. And we would have some funding that would come back. And I believe State Fair told me it'd be about $81.25 a day, $8,125 a day during the State Fair.
Thank you. Any questions? Can you get that done this week? No.
I'd like to have it done this week. The next one is Willard HVAC replacement. This is a set of units. There's about 72 in this building. Last year during the winter storm, I had talked to the budget before about another area that we lost, but we lost every unit in this building. Every coil froze up, and every unit that we had to cancel school for several weeks and then move the kids around to other areas on our property. We have made a lot of repairs on these. We repaired every one of them and got them back online. Took us about 3 months. Since then, we have had several that still continue to fail. As a matter of fact, we pulled, I think it was 3 out last week. And we're getting to the point that we can't patch the coils anymore. And to replace them between $2,000 and $3,000 a piece, feel like this is the most economical way to do what we're trying to do by putting new units in. I don't believe that we could put rooftop units in it, just because of the structural part of the roof. And also the cost would be more considerable than what we're asking for the 72 units.
Senator Kinley.
Carl, thank you, and if you'd indulge me a little bit here, my business is managing some commercial buildings that I own, and so I'm trying to understand. So you have 72 in-room units
Yes,
for
sir.
72 rooms that you have in the building?
Yes, sir. And some are classrooms, some are office areas.
Yeah, and so the cost here is, it's $11,000 or $12,000 per unit if you just average it out.
And that would count design fees in there as well, sir.
Yeah, and then on the private market, I think that buys you about 10 tons of air conditioning. Are you buying smaller units than that for these rooms, or?
Well, I know that we looked at doing rooftop, and we would be looking at about 150 ton total.
Yeah.
And that would be about 1.5 million or so. I believe the units that we have in there now have 2-ton compressors in each individual one. So not only if a coil goes out are we spending $2,000 to $3,000, but a compressor's $1,000. So what we're trying to do is get a more centralized unit, like a chiller, to where we use our current piping and use hot and cold water and get away from the compressor system, is what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And then we would have one main unit that supplies air and heat
The
for the whole
rooftop
building.
units that I'm used to dealing with, if I were to purchase 150 tons all at once. Normally, you break it up and put in a number of 10 or maybe 20-ton units so that you don't have a total failure on one system at any given time. But it's, maybe I'm just out of the market, but it seems like the cost of 150,000 tons wouldn't be $1.5 million. It'd be closer to the 150,000 than it would be that. And so I'm struggling to see how this system works. But these are basically 2-ton units for each room then.
For the air conditioning side of it.
Yeah.
Hot water supplied by a heat exchanger that we have in our
Boy,
mechanical room.
that seems like an awfully, I mean, to have to put in 72 units, that just seems like a lot of.
Well, it's not just the cost of putting the unit on the roof, it's also the duct
Right.
work that we have to run, and also the
So
units.
these units that are these in-room units, you don't have ductwork in the rooms at this point in time?
No, sir, we do not. So every room would have to be penetrated,
Yeah.
every wall
Well, that
poured
would
through.
add, okay.
Yes, sir. And then, not only that, but every unit would have to be removed, and the way that they sit in the walls, they would have to be blocked up, insulated, covered, and then all the piping removed.
Okay.
So we just felt like this was the more economical way, and still get what we want.
How
heating and
old is
cooling.
this building that we're doing this in?
I believe it's 1964.
So this building is over 50 years old right now. And it's, how many square feet in the building?
I believe, let me get my glasses here, it's 54,000 square feet, roughly, a little under.
Okay, all right. Well, I hope we're not spending money on a 50, 60-year-old situation that we turn around and have to have a new building again in 3 years on.
I believe the building is in decent shape. We've just
Okay.
had some issues with mechanicals.
Okay.
And that's what we're trying to address.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Since they are in-room units, I guess, you know, what is the life of an in-room unit?
Normally, I would say 20-plus years.
Okay, so in 5 to 10 years, if for some reason that building is abandoned or we redo a new building, is there a useful, I guess, value after 10 years in these units, or it's hard to predict, or?
I think that would be hard to predict. I know that even if, let's say, enrollment declined, I know that they have used other areas of our school. We have Vincent University, Ball State University, Board of Health that are in our buildings. So I believe we would find some use for it.
Okay.
And would just not abandon it and not ever use it again.
Okay, appreciate that. That's important if you have other uses.
Okay.
Any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now moving on to university projects, Mr. Hahn.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Tony Hahn with Purdue University. Glad to have you on our campus today. I'll be presenting 2 projects and what appears to be the only university projects on the agenda today. The first is the Agricultural and Life Science Building. And if this looks familiar, it was our #1 priority for the system in the last budget session. This is a 122,000 square foot project that will consolidate all of our animal science faculty and staff and students from 4 different facilities currently. Funding for this project, for the $60 million project, is $35 million from fee replacement that was in the budget, $15 million in gifts, and the university is matching $10 million from our capital reserves. Animal science is the largest department in our College of Ag. About almost 20% of our college is animal science. This will create a modern research and teaching space that will encourage collaboration with engineering and health and human science and vet med. It'll consolidate 170 staff from numerous buildings and will decommission and eventually demolish 4 buildings that will eliminate approximately $19.9 million in deferred R&R when those 4 buildings are gone. The project will have modern labs, classrooms, space for faculty, an animal teaching classroom that will be essentially a livestock arena for 200 students to view and interact with livestock, as well as a USDA level meat processing facility that we will sell much of in the Boiler Butcher Block in the building next door. And this is actually phase 1 and phase 2 of this project. If you recall, we were able, through a gracious donor, to add $5 more million in gifts, and the General Assembly was able to increase $5 million. And to do phase 1 and 2 at the same time, using the CMC construction method, there's considerable savings. We have an aggressive timeline, and using that CM at-risk delivery method will not only save us money, but we plan to move in July of 2017, which will save us 2 full semesters earlier than we anticipated. It's an important project to the college and to the ag industry of Indiana, as evidenced by their support, and we'd appreciate the committee's favorable consideration of the project. Any questions?
Thank you. So part of this number includes demolition costs?
Yes.
Also? Okay. And what buildings will go down and where will be?
That
Approximately.
includes some smaller ones you may not be familiar with, like a poultry annex and a small USDA building. Food stores is where this building will be placed. That will be demolished to build this building. And a wing of Lilly, once we get the rest of the biology folks out of there, will be decommissioned as well. Okay. So it's back here in the Ag Mall, 4 small buildings.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Continue.
The second project is the Dowling Park purchase. And this is from the Calumet campus. And I think this is an opportunity for me to update this committee on our consolidation update. And while I do that, I have Steve Turner, Vice Chancellor of Finance and Administration for the Purdue Northwest School. And he has a few handouts on this project. But let me update you on the consolidation. As you know, Purdue Calumet and Purdue North Central are working to consolidate into one campus. And the administrative pieces are coming together fairly quickly. In fact, Steve, as I said, is the Vice Chancellor for both physical campuses. But the academic piece is coming together now, and pending Higher Learning Commission accreditation early next year, it will officially become Purdue Northwest on July 1st of 2016. Once consolidated, we'll have a head count of over 15,000. That will put us at about that school at about the 5th largest in the state. Everything's moving ahead as scheduled on that consolidation. Specifically to the Dowling Park purchase, this is a process that discussion started several years ago with the city of Hammond. This is the purchase of a 15-acre portion of Dowling Park, and it features an outdoor sports complex which would be utilized by the over 1,000 students who participate in intramurals, plus the 212 student athletes that participate in 12 varsity sports. Currently, for many sports, we rent fields from the high schools and are subject to the high school's schedule or rainouts or reschedules. The purchase of the 15-acre portion of Dowling Park features an outdoor sports complex, and that's important because the Calumet campus is landlocked and does not have any outdoor field facilities where it is now. The park is 1.25 miles from the campus. The agreement with the city is such that the city, over the past year and continuing as we speak, has put over $8 million in improvements. And that's in the photos that you see there. That's the baseball, that's the soccer fields, that's some small buildings. Those are tennis courts. The purchase price is $3.5 million, with the agreement that we enter into a 20-year use agreement with the city, so that they may use the park when we do not. And that's a good utilization of the asset, because when the park would see most of the activity is the summer when our students are not participating in athletics. The square footage of the project may look small at a little over 2,000 because that's simply some of the outbuildings and concession stands. So on the project summary, don't let that be misleading. Now, the Calumet campus, and in fact the Northwest campus, has quite a changing student population that's overwhelmingly full-time. Over 70% of the students at the Calumet and North Central campuses are full-time students. And the average age is 25. So that's much more like a traditional campus than what you may think. And these intramural and varsity athletics are important to enhance student life and build campus community. As we know from the research we've done with the Gallup folks, it's important to have engaged students that participate in community and campus activities. And in fact, the Calumet athletes now, the 212 athletes, have a 10% higher retention rate freshman and sophomore year, and have a GPA over 3.0, which is higher than the general population of the campus. Equally important in this purchase is the partnership with the City of Hammond. This purchase creates a strong bond between the City of Hammond and the university. It's an important project that the university and city are excited about. It does wonders for the town-gown relationship we have there, and we appreciate your favorable consideration. Any questions?
Thank you. We see that the money's coming out of the capital planning reserve.
Yes.
And you also used some money out of capital planning reserve in the prior project.
Yes.
At some point in time, and maybe not today, I think the committee would like to look at kind of how that fund is replenished, where
Sure.
those monies and line items, how that money flows through capital planning reserves.
We'd be happy to show you a diagram of where that money, when we filed these project reports, I think that balance was about 58, 59 million.
And you don't plan to spend it down to zero?
No,
I presume?
that's why it's the reserve. You understand the importance of a reserve as well.
Okay, thank you. Representative Clinker.
Just a simple question. Purdue North Central, are they working in collaboration with you, and do they have a similar park, Purdue North Central?
And I'll defer to Steve Turner here, who oversees administration of
Right.
those two campuses.
And yes, they do. We are working in collaboration, the two campuses are, and the athletic programs have already been essentially declared folded together, so that we know when the two campuses become Purdue Northwest, we've already identified who the athletic director will be. We've already identified some of the other issues for these two programs to fold seamlessly together.
So Purdue North Central will lose their title, and it'll be Purdue Northwest.
Purdue Northwest will be the name of the institution as a whole, and that Purdue Northwest University will include two campus locations, the Purdue North Central campus location and the Purdue Calumet location.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
And as we consolidate, the athletic programs are currently in AIA, and they will eventually proceed to NCAA endorsement.
Okay.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that a record that we only have one university presenting? We'll next turn to the review items. And we have Mr. Orm coming back with Department of Corrections.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. 8 years ago now, I came in front of the committee with a group to ask your permission to make some energy to put in effect some energy conservation projects. In a very simplistic explanation, these projects, we actually do physical modifications and efficiency upgrades to our prisons, and then the actual cost of those projects are paid for by the realized savings. A third-party entity holds those that guarantee, and if the energy shortfalls fail to make their projections, then they make they pay us the lost savings. I've come in front of the committee several times over the years with these projects. We've completed 4 of them. The first question you folks normally have for me is, how are we doing to this point? I've put a summary, I believe, on every one of your desks that show the realized savings to this point in the life of each of these projects. I can honestly say, as the guy that manages them on a daily basis, I have staff that manage those projects and measure those outcomes on a daily basis. And I can tell you that the realized savings you see in front of you are accurate. The projects do work with good management, and good state employees manage the projects. The purpose for this appearance today, this review item, is to ask your consideration to repurpose some funding in Phase 4, and we refer what we refer to as Phase 4, was an all-encompassing energy project at our Branchville Correctional Facility in Southwest Indiana. Branchville Correctional Facility evolved from a work camp, a forestry work camp from the 1960s to a 2,200 bed medium security adult male correctional facility. That facility was heated by propane. I think when I come to the committee that day, I believe my discussion was led by, I think I could by accident do anything better than heat a complete correctional facility with propane being trucked in. That project has achieved all of our goals. One of the components of that project was, in fact, our wastewater reduction. We reduced the water use, the domestic water usage signature of the facility dramatically, but our rates that we were being charged by the municipality were dramatically higher than anything else we were seeing across the state. We went back as a result of the project, we went back and renegotiated a rate with the municipality that led to us continuing service to them, heightened efficiency, lowered rate, of course, a much reduced bill. So the project, the construction project to build our own wastewater plant was removed from that project, and we had some residual funding. The request that we have today is at the same time that we had entered into and obtained successful negotiation of that project with the municipality and freed up the construction funds. We also received a notice from Michigan City that they were raising our rates exponentially as a result of some environmental issues that they have with their plant in Northwest Indiana. You folks, it's been my honor to escort the committee through the Indiana State Prison. It was built in the Lincoln administration is when it started. It has evolved into a 2,000-bed, level 5, high-security prison. The facility is actually in excellent condition. A fair number of the buildings, 22 to be exact, obtained their cooling from a domestic water cooling system. Once again, very much oversimplifying. I had never seen anything like this in my career. Water comes from the domestic water line that feeds everything from the food service area, the water fountains. It's circulated through a series of coils with air blowing over them to produce cool air. Then it goes right back out the drain. We obtain no use for it other than we're tapping its thermal energy to cool the building. Unfortunately, we're paying the same rate for that water as we would for any other use, and then we're paying for it then we're also paying a bill on the other end of the loop to the sewer municipality. So it's the gift that keeps on giving. It is and just to give you a little bit, I was astounded when we started running the math on that project. 21,533,000 gallons of water a year. 21 million gallons of water a year that we're pumping through, getting no use out of other than its 53-degree roughly thermal energy and putting it right back down the sewer. This project, we're requesting to reutilize some of the funds from the negated cost of the Branchville wastewater plant construction, go right back, use that money to put in 22 new conventional cooling units of appropriate size and modern, efficient design, and embed those into our electronic management system of that facility, and get rid of the water usage that we have. The total construction cost of the project is $1.7 million. The total guaranteed savings is $2.5. I think the committee probably realizes by now I don't like to miss marks. We actually project the savings to be much higher than that. That's a very conservative number. There's nothing unexpected about the project. It's traditional construction work, other than at some point in time we have to bore a hole through an 8-foot thick wall. But we have that. We've done that before, and we know how to do it. This is typical construction. We are requesting your permission to repurpose this money, work the contract, put it right back into the realized savings. It will be guaranteed.
Questions?
If you have any questions on the money aspect, you folks know I'm not the money person. I've brought a representative from the Finance Authority with me.
And most of the savings in your energy projects, have they gone back to the institutions that generated the savings so that those employees who are working firsthand feel the reward of that?
And that would not be I'll try and answer that question, sir. Okay. I'm not the CFO. We've worked closely with the budget agency, hand in hand with the budget agency, every step of the way through these projects. Through the years where our budget was absolutely, where we were having difficulty making our budget, this is where we were able to absorb some of our budget impact. So the facilities now, we've kind of come out the other side of that. The facilities have now become at first we were really shoving this down their throats. They become one of our biggest proponents of this. The individual superintendents, the individual correctional officers have all adopted this. Putnamville, and not just because I worked there for 17 years, Putnamville is one of our biggest success stories. We actually heat that entire facility with a biomass waste product from a pallet manufacturing operation on the other side of the street. We again this year, as we go back, we constantly monitor this process. So we came back this year and we realized, well, last year, because of the extreme cold weather, we lost some days of free heating because of we weren't able to store enough fuel. It was getting contaminated by water and freezing to the ground. So we used some of those savings to construct more capacity to store the material inside. So the facilities absolutely are feeling the effects of that. The agency as a whole tracks and realizes that. Our commissioner is one of our biggest proponents of the project. So it's over the next, as we continue to manage our energy signature, what you're going to see over the next few years is where we're at in our process. Natural gas is as slow as it's going to go, we believe. Fracking is where it's at. Unless there's some federal regulation of the fracking technology, gas is cheap, free is better. Wood chips are free. That's what we're heating Putnamville with. So we're continuing where we're seeing escalations in our signature, and our cost is specifically now as municipalities struggle to meet timelines imposed on environmental projects after 9/11. We're seeing the water cost go up astronomically, then the wastewater cost proportionally. So that electricity, of course, is in a standard incline. So this is how we've offset a lot of our rate increases by these efficiency projects.
Appreciate your input and follow-up. Any further questions for Kevin? Thank you very much. Item number 2, 21 fund. Mr. Stuff and others, or Eric? Thank you. Mr. Shields?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And members of the committee, we have some handouts here. We've got a slide deck that we'd like to use, but this room doesn't look outfitted for your viewing, so we brought handouts, and Ian's passing them out now. Ian handles our nanotechnology and advanced manufacturing efforts at the IADC, and he's leading our effort with respect to this particular initiatives. We also have with us Dr. Byron Pipes here with Purdue, who I think most of you may have met yesterday when you had a briefing on the composite slab here. So I'll just give kind of a brief overview here, and then I'll hand it off to Ian to run through the deck. So we were approached last year by several states who were forming a coalition to compete for a federal DOE grant in the composites space. And so we saw this really as a unique opportunity for us here in Indiana to leverage the expertise, particularly here at Purdue University, as well as other assets, including the auto industry that's incredibly intense here in Indiana, to advance the development of carbon fiber materials. So this partnership includes several states here in the Midwest, as well as one a little bit further west, and Ian will walk through what those look like, along with the private sector and federal resources. What we have before you today has been approved by the IEDC board, I think last month, if I remember correctly. And so why does this matter? A cost-efficient method of manufacturing carbon fiber materials is going to be developed somewhere, probably in the U.S., hopefully in the U.S. And if Indiana is at the center of that, we can be at the forefront of that industry, as well as potentially other industries that have yet to be conceived. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ian, and he can walk you through the deck, and you can ask questions.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, you need to hit again. You toggle off.
There we are.
You're on now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, distinguished members of the Budget Committee, for allowing us to present here today. The real star here at the table is Dr. Byron Pipes, who I've had the pleasure of working with over the course of the last year and a half after my arrival to the state. Dr. Pipes has a rich history in the composites industry for the past 40 years and has had a number of experiences there. He also served at...
Yeah, hit it again. It went off automatic. I don't know what happened.
There we are. Yeah. He also served as president of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, so I'm very pleased that he's on this team. In terms of why it is that IEDC decided that this was in great interest to us, if you look at that second slide, Indiana is leading in manufacturing in this country. That comes as no surprise to us, given that almost a third of our gross state product is attributed to manufacturing. At the IDC, we're beginning to think as to how do we continue that leadership role, and looking at some of these public-private partnerships and strategic sectors is a part of that. If we flip to the next slide, Eric went over to some of the history on the IACME public-private partnership. This was a Department of Energy competition that took place over the course of several months. Indiana chose to partner with some of our neighboring states to compete for this $70 million grant over a period of 5 years. We competed against a number of other states, and we were pleased to find out that we won in January of this past year. Indiana is slated to receive up to $15 million in matching funds over that 5-year period if, in fact, we do go forward with the $15 million commitment to have our Center of Excellence here. Notably, 150 companies have signed up to support IACME, so this is a private sector industry-led initiative, and you'll see a listing of those companies that have pledged to date on the few of the last pages here. Composite materials, I understand a number of you had the opportunity to sit down with Byron yesterday. Simply put, composite materials are made from 2 or more constituent materials, and they become much stronger and have other properties when mixed together. An example is the fiber reinforced polymer that will be central to this program. IACME is a national institute. Indiana, on slide 5, you'll see, is partnered with Michigan, Ohio, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Colorado. So it's kind of Midwest plus one. Colorado being very proficient in some of the new wind technologies. So this is very much a national effort that Indiana is a part of. Slide 6 was very convincing to Secretary Smith and I when we saw this. It's always convincing when you look at a slide like this and you can't see your state. That's a good thing here, and obviously this slide demonstrates the automotive footprint in our state and the supply base that helps sustain that. Slide 7, clearly this is geared towards automotive. Byron and I estimate that this program will be very much focused on automotive, and probably 70 to 85% of the resources will be geared towards promoting carbon fiber in the automotive industry, but wind and other areas will also be focused on in terms of turbine blades and natural gas tanks. Cost share, so that's an important element of this public-private partnership. You'll see on slide 8 a breakdown of who's contributing to the national effort. So Indiana is at the top alongside Michigan and Tennessee. Ohio, Colorado, and Kentucky are coming in at lower levels. These were all contributions that came in from the respective economic development organizations in those states. You also see companies such as Dow, Ford, VW, Dassault, and Lockheed Martin are very much leaders in this, and others are coming along as the program materializes. Slide 9 just shows a breakdown of the leadership structure of IACME. As part of our commitment to the organization, the IDC was able to have a board member on this board of directors. I will serve as a board member for the next 2 years on IACME. Byron will lead the Center of Excellence here in Indiana and for the national effort, and will have a key role on the technical advisory board. We're pleased about that. Just for your information, Dale Brosius, the Chief Commercialization Officer for the national effort, is based in Indianapolis and will continue to reside in Indianapolis. So Indiana has a very prominent role in the leadership structure. In terms of the technical aspects of the program, you'll see Indiana, again, due to Byron's expertise in this area, will have a key role throughout the various technical areas that we're focused on. Modeling and simulation is the key aspect here, but we'll also be getting into additive manufacturing and 3D printing as part of our effort, and you'll see that more or less this slide tells us that all of the companies participating in this effort will have to come to Indiana at some point in this process. So well done, Byron, in creating the structure. The primary focus in Indiana Stake, really what this slide says and what we really need to focus on here are the technical goals, which lowering the cost of carbon fiber will be important. But more importantly are the jobs and investment that if we are leading here, we foresee Indiana being a central job creator in this program, and that's how our success will be measured. And IADC will very much take a look at those goals and measure ourselves against them. IACME validation facilities at Purdue on slide 12. So this also involves construction here at Purdue. PRF and Purdue University have contributed $12.35 million to support the new composites initiative and build out a new facility in Research Park. Construction has began on that, and we're excited about that initiative, giving a physical footprint here for the composites labs to be centered around and expanded here at Purdue. I would say that companies will be a big part of that, alongside workers that will be trained in this industry. Slide 13, you see some of the early support that we've received from companies located here in Indiana. In fact, Byron just stepped out of a meeting with some Honda executives that are here learning about where they will benefit from the program. Obviously, they're major drivers of it. Dallara, based in Indianapolis, a key company. Just to give you some practical examples in conversations when we were deciding whether we should be a part of this or not. A company like Dallara has, before this program, knew that they were going to the composites space. They built Indy cars. They had set aside $15 million that was going to be spent in Italy designing composites and processes. After they found out about the program, they decided to hold off on that investment in Italy and send their chief composites engineer here for the next 2 years in Indianapolis. So just one practical example of an investment here. They're going to be a big part of this. IDI, SABIC, a company not listed here, Thermwood. Thermwood makes composites equipment and will be a big part of the initiative here at Purdue. Slide 14, it's our goal to leverage the 21 fund with private sector dollars and, in this case, federal dollars. I mentioned the 1-to-1 match with DOE over the 5-year period. Del Systems has announced that they will contribute $12.5 million to the program here at Purdue, almost matching the state's commitment right there. So one example of a company stepping up that makes some of this modeling and simulation software. On slide 15, some of you may have seen automobiles that are starting to use carbon fiber. This actually is entirely made out of carbon fiber. It was created in 12 to 14 parts, printed in 6 weeks. This is a 1964 Shelby Cobra, and I would say that it weighs half of the original, just kind of giving you an idea of what today's technology can already do. This was the announcement, this other picture here at Purdue that the Secretary participated in. The last several slides show the widespread support nationally and internationally for the program. You might recognize many of these company names, but those that you don't recognize are probably small and medium-sized enterprises that make up a big portion of this program, and we're happy to see them coming into the state on a regular basis to participate in it. With that, I would just ask if Byron has anything else to...
I think Senator Kenley has a question for you, Ian.
Thank you, Ian. It's a little hard to follow the the nuts and bolts of the presentation, but I saw a car in Seattle that was put together in Seattle, and it's an electric car that BMW has, and there's a company in Washington that made the carbon fiber that reduces the weight there. Is that what we're talking about to some extent?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, that's one of the groups actually that we competed with. So there were 5 teams, and we were the team selected for this. I think because the world believes that the cars largely will still be produced in Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio
Well,
in the future.
That's where I'm going. To me, are you trying to figure out what the material is, and is the carbon fiber material that you use, is it readily available to be accessed in this part of the country to be used? And then we know we have a car industry here, so the thought would be if we could pull all this together in these electric cars where they need this lighter weight,
right?
That might be a primary application. I'm sure there would be dozens of other ones that you can think of.
Well, leisure products, of course, is pervasive in our fishing rods and tennis rackets and so on. So that industry
Okay.
already exists.
Okay.
We are flying airplanes today, commercial airplanes with this material.
Okay.
Exclusively, completely replaced aluminum. Ford has introduced a new lightweight truck. That's aluminum. That will be carbon fiber in the future. We can save another 30 to 40% weight with that. Crash worthiness is something that's always on everyone's mind. Interestingly enough, our IndyCar experience gives us a lot of advantage there, and Delar brings some technology. So yes, we produce over 100 million pounds of that carbon fiber today worldwide. A large fraction of it is produced actually here in the U.S., and part of this program will be a new fiber line, very likely to be in Tennessee, so the raw material will be close by.
Yeah.
And I don't foresee a carbon fiber line in this state immediately, but it will come. We need about 1 billion pounds a year to produce the number of cars that we're going to produce. We produce 100 million today. There's a lot of growth opportunity. So I think this could be a raw material, but frankly, the value added comes from the use of that raw material in designing new cars and providing the infrastructure, being a tier 1 supplier, tier 2 supplier to an auto industry, which is what we have been as a state for years. We supply into the industry and then we assemble the cars here. There are more Hondas assembled here in this state than perhaps in Japan. So we've got the industry, we supply into it, we deliver the finished product, not only in Honda, as you know, Subaru here in town, and Chevrolet trucks, and Fort Wayne, and Toyota with a large plant. We are a big automotive manufacturing plant.
And so that technology could even be transferred to as a composite in the vehicles that are already being made in Indiana.
Indeed, that's
in
what's
the
happening.
future.
That's what's happening right now, Senator. What we're really working at is to replace metals manufacturing technology with the technology for this industry.
Well, that makes it a little more concrete for me to understand.
Indeed.
All this.
And that's what's necessary. If we do that, we will be the automotive manufacturing state of the future.
Thank you.
Ian, from my standpoint, so we've already applied to DOE, Department of Energy, and basically been accepted. It's getting the state match there, so we don't have to go through another application process, right?
That's correct, Chairman.
Yeah. And Dassault Systems specifically is going to match Indiana money, put it in Indiana. Are there any other companies, I think, is the Honda Conversations specific money to Indiana? You anticipate other companies will step up to say, we're directing our money to you?
Yes, that's exactly the case. In Dassault Systems, for instance, all of these companies that you see on the last couple of slides have the option of choosing which location they will invest their match. And Dassault Systems, I estimate nearly 100% of their money will be going to Indiana. Honda, those conversations are involving what they're going to contribute. Delara, for instance, I would imagine that, almost 100% of their cost share would go to Indiana. So those companies very much have the option of choosing where they're going to make their match. But you're correct, Dassault Systems, that $12.35 million will be invested here. Yeah.
I'd like to make a further point that a company in southern Indiana, Therm Wood, currently makes wood routing equipment. It's a gantry robot system, one of the most sophisticated in the country. They've decided to go into 3D printing for carbon fiber, and they're going to build the machines that do that and sell machines. So this will be another OEM industry we have in the state now that will obviously support this industry. We were with them this week, and they committed to invest in this, develop the machines with us, and I think this will be a wonderful success story coming up.
Any further questions for Ian? Dr. Pipes, do you have any other further comments? It was a cool-looking car last night.
I agree.
Thank you. Next, go to item 3, primary care shortage scholarships. Mr. Hawkins, is that correct? Pardon? Okay. I'm sorry, I don't have your name on my list. I only know what's on the scorecard. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We have Dan Kallenberger here this morning from the Marion College of Medicine to present on the scholarship.
Thank you.
Good morning. On behalf of the Marion University President, Daniel Elsner, and the entire Marion University community, I thank you for the opportunity to come here today and give you guys an update on the primary care shortage scholarship. On August 3rd of this year, the Marion University College of Osteopathic Medicine welcomed 162 new students selected from nearly 4,300 applications. The students comprise MUCOM's third class, which is the third class of medical students at Indiana's first new medical school in over 110 years. The class surpasses national averages in almost every measurable category. The decision to incentivize Indiana residents to participate in the primary care scholarship has been a success when you consider the following facts. MUCOM's is an Indiana school with the stated mission of serving the people of Indiana. MUCOM's goal is to have at least 50% of each class come from Indiana as well. Nationally, nearly 60% of all osteopathic physicians practice in a primary care field. Through the primary care shortage area scholarship, MUCOM has confirmed commitments in writing from 82 current medical students who will serve the citizens of Indiana, with 10 more pending. So a total of 92 total participants in that program. Currently, over 40 cities and towns in 28 different counties are represented from those students. Moreover, 50% of those counties are medically underserved, including Allen, DeKalb, Elkhart, Marion, Park, and Vanderbilt, just to name a few. The program is also a very positive tool in recruiting applicants from Indiana. Each year, roughly 90% of all Indiana residents who apply to osteopathic medical schools apply to MUCOM. Finally, any excess money not used for the scholarships is returned to the state. As you can see, together we're making a difference for healthcare in Indiana. Again, thank you for the opportunity to appear here today. At this time, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about MUCOM or the primary care scholarship.
Thank you. Appreciate your information. When will the first class graduate again?
2017.
2017, okay.
And how many members of that class will actually be in this program, do you think?
Yeah, roughly.
At this time, unless
yeah,
they withdraw.
Right now, we have 40 signed up with 5 pending, so a total of 45 students.
Okay.
Out of roughly 88 who were from Indiana.
I think that Dr. Brown and I have had a few in the hallway type conversations. And I think we would appreciate it, and I'm sure the other legislators would appreciate it as well, if you tried to evaluate how best to make the program work. You know, we just put together some thoughts and at your suggestion about how this ought to be constructed and when it ought to kick in and what levels. And
Yeah.
so we would think that surely we didn't hit the mark. It was just a wild guess like that, and we need to continue to figure out how to make the program work the best.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely put together some options for you guys and present those to you.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Item 4, Department of Child Services, Judge Bonaventura and others.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Brown and distinguished members of the Budget Committee. Good morning to you as well. Again. Like me. I have a big mouth anyway, so probably knows that. Yeah. No, actually, I went to Marion University, so I think that's why it's you know, that's haunting me as well. Did everyone get the report? Okay. This is Doris Tolliver to my left, your right. She's our chairman. She's not our chairman yet. She's our chief of staff. And she'll be presenting with me this morning. So this is a little bit different because we don't have a PowerPoint for me to look up at and all that. So we'll have to all follow. You have what I have in front of you. So I'll begin the report. Just as a reminder, what our mission and vision is, which is, of course, to protect Indiana's children from abuse and neglect, and to work to ensure their financial support, make sure that they live in thriving families and communities. I think one of the things that we forget a lot about while we're doing our business of protecting children is that we do operate the Child Support Division, which is a very large division. We have over 200 people that work in it, and last year we collected over $1 billion in child support for the children that don't live with both of their parents, where one parent is paying child support. And frankly, very proud of that division, in that in 2003, we were ranked 35th in the nation as it relates to establishment of paternity, establishing a child support order, and then collection of that child support. And today we rank 9th in the nation. So it's a lot of hard work that goes into that, and I'm proud of the staff. Next, Doris? It's you.
Good morning. We last presented to. Good morning. We last presented to this committee in November of 2014, and since then, we've done really a lot to improve our operations, and wanted to provide a brief update on where we are since the last report out. In January of 2015, as you all know, we contracted with Deloitte Consulting to conduct a workload analysis and provide us with some recommendations to improve our operations, as well as implement measures to meet the caseload standard, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. We implemented a targeted effort to close completed assessments or investigations of child abuse and neglect. We enhanced our training curriculum to provide better hands-on experience and mentoring support for family case managers beginning their work in child welfare. In March of 2015, we increased our monthly FCM training capacity to accommodate, on average, 65 new family case managers a month. On some months, we hire upwards of 90 to 95 because we start a new family case manager cohort every other week. We implemented enhanced supervisor training to provide specialized training and mentorship opportunities for new supervisors. We've had a standardized curriculum for new supervisors. We built upon that so that we can ensure that supervisors have tool sets beginning as supervisors so that they can effectively support and mentor family case managers. In March, we also received the final Deloitte recommendations, which called for us to hire an additional 100 family case managers, which I'm glad to report we have completed filling. In April of 2015, we passed the biennial budget, which allocated $7.5 million to support the addition of those 100 family case managers and 17 family case manager supervisors. And we also began implementing the Deloitte recommendations that we received in the report. In June, we were awarded a $735,000 grant from the National Child Welfare Workforce Institute, which is designed to improve our recruitment and retention efforts. This is a grant that we're really proud of because we are only one of 10 jurisdictions nationwide that have received such an award. Our grant is to support a partnership that we have with IU School of Social Work, again, to address retention issues in our organization. In June, we also hired a new Director of Child Welfare Outcomes to oversee our agency's data analysis and process improvements. You may recall in the Deloitte recommendations that there was a recommendation that we onboard someone to sort of manage the project management office. We've retitled that to Child Welfare Outcomes, and we have hired the person to fill that role. And then in July, as I mentioned earlier, we finished hiring the 100 new family case managers that were added that we were given the funding for at the last budget session. We also launched an additional benefit as part of our employee assistance program. Department of Child Services is the only state agency right now that has the benefit of all of our workers being able to receive up to 3 counseling sessions per issue with a licensed therapist. And those issues can be personal or they can be workplace related, be it financial in nature, be it related to marital circumstances, or be it related to the pressures of the job. This is a benefit that we're really excited about, and we have just begun implementing our efforts to really message that program.
And okay, I figured this out. They can't be on at the same time, I think. See? It just took me 20 minutes to figure it out. Right. Okay. And so to kind of tag along with what Doris was saying, that actually, we're the only state agency that, at this moment in time, provides that for their employees, and it's just exciting that we're the first. And of course, we always think, and rightly so, that our workers are the work that they do is really stressful, and all the help that we can give them, we certainly want to do that to ensure that they continue to keep children safe in the state of Indiana. So the first part of the Deloitte recommendations that you'll see on slide 5, Doris touched on the EAP program. We also have the critical response team, which is a team of peers that are trained, that go out when there is a crisis, whether it's in the workplace itself, whether it's something that happened in the field. If you read the news or saw the news this week, there was a case manager that was killed in Vermont after removing a 9-year-old child from her mother. And so it would be that kind of incident. Or recently, we had an employee that had an untimely death due to cancer at age 50, and the staff took it very hard. So we deployed the critical response team for that as well. As Doris said, we've increased the training classes from 50 a month to 65 a month. Last year, fiscal year 2015, we trained 512 family case managers that were deployed to the field. We have adjusted our family case manager training structure to allow more hands-on training and mentorship in the local offices, so that they have more days in preparation for when they're actually in the field, so they don't just graduate and we give them a caseload. They spend probably half the time of their 12-week training in the field with supervision over a modest caseload. In addition to that, state personnel has hired a specialized recruiter for DCS. We're the only agency that has a specialized recruiter so that we can get the right person to begin with, which will help with our retention. And enhanced recruiting efforts, which would include social media, job fairs, and our Bachelor of Social Work scholarship went from 36 that we offered to now 50. And last year, the Department of Child Services participated in 26 job fairs across the state. Further on the next slide, you will see that what some of the Deloitte recommendations were. One of them was the case closure initiative. So let me give you two examples. One would be where cases are referred to the department, and we have a certain time within which to do that assessment, which is an investigation. And so we have an effort going on that we have a tool that will flag for us, if you will, when an assessment goes beyond 30 days, that they're required to be done and to their supervisor within 30 days. Now, that doesn't mean they don't investigate it, because statutorily we have a 1-hour investigation. Sometimes we have a 24-hour investigation. So those investigations are getting done. We're talking about paperwork that shows up in the system. So even if we do an assessment and we decide not to substantiate, which means there will be no case filed, they still sit out there, and it looks like we have open cases. And so that's an initiative that we've begun in Marion County. As an example, within like 6 weeks, we closed upwards of 1,400 cases that were kind of in that status. Children were safe. That wasn't the issue. It was paperwork closure. On the back end, we have cases where the case might be closed in the court. The case has been dismissed. And so the case manager knows this matter is closed, the child's at home or in some form of permanency, and they go about putting out the other fires, and then we'll have hundreds of cases sitting there where they're closed in the court system, if you will, because we don't have the same technology, and in Magic, they're still open. So when we count how many cases are open, that will be counted as an open case. So Deloitte helped to magnify that for us and say, hey, these are kind of low-hanging fruit that you guys can kind of clean up to make sure that we have an accurate case count. So we've begun that initiative. The other thing that was pretty glaring is that in each county, it seemed when they did their evaluation that there was that one person in each office that everybody would go to and say, hey, Joe, can you help me with Magic? You know, with the computer system, I'm not a computer person like me. You know, I'm old, so I know nothing about it. Can you do it for me, kind of thing? And so we're trying to really identify Magic super users, we call them, in each region and each county, so that they can really do the training of the staff on the ground so that we aren't duplicating efforts, so that everybody becomes a super user and knows how to do that. And then the other kind of startling thing I think we found out was that 30% of the time that case managers spend is spent on administrative duties. And so we have a whole committee that's realigning what the case manager duties will be so that we can deploy some of that work to administrative staff, which is why we added 17 administrative staff recently, or are in the process of doing that. And then that'll free up case managers by 30% to get to the business of keeping children safe. And then we've revamped, if you will, or improved, enhanced our management training for supervisors, recognizing that we know that oftentimes people will leave or stay in a job depending on how supported they feel. And the one person that they are completely connected to is their supervisor, and we need to really train those people so that they're giving the best support and advice that they can to the family case managers. And then I'll talk to you about our hotline, which several states have reached out to us about our hotline and the fact that and how good it is, and I'll brag about it a little bit for a second here. As you can see from the graph, it went up from 177,000 reports in 2012 to 198,000 in 2014. Somebody might say, well, does that mean that child abuse is up? It might mean that, but it might also mean, in conjunction with that, that there's a more efficient way, a better way to report. As I've said probably to you all before, that because it's mind-boggling in a way, that we used to have 300 numbers to call, and now we have one. And I think the public, with all our advertising, has gotten out there that this is, if you see something, say something, and here's the number to do that. And they are, in fact, responding to that. I'm very, very proud of the fact that in fiscal year 15, we did, for non-law enforcement people, it would take 32 seconds to get someone to answer the phone, which is pretty incredible, and 20 seconds for law enforcement. And they have a little number to press, a certain number that takes them to the front of the line. And as you know, we added the locations, Blackford, Lawrence, St. Joe, and Vanderburgh to Indianapolis, and they're all up and running and staffed, which I am certain is because with the additional help, which means the answer times are shorter. Let me see if there's anything else I need to tell you about that. I don't think so. So let's get to what the meat of our business is. Our numbers this year over last, state fiscal year ended, showed us that we had a 26% increase, in fact, in filings of CHINS cases. At end of fiscal year, we had 18,621 children in need of service cases. Those are actual cases that are pending in a court. We had 2,596 informal adjustments. Those are cases where families, they're substantiations for abuse or neglect, but it's a first-time kind of minor, looks like we can work with this family. So rather than get the coercive intervention of the court involved, we work with them. They sign an agreement that for 6 months that they'll do certain things to keep the child safe and improve their living conditions. And if that doesn't happen, we can continue it for another period of time, or in the alternative, dismiss it if they do well, or if not, file the case in open court. So that's almost 2,600 cases. And then 674 collaborative care cases, which kind of has stayed the same in numbers over the last couple of years. Those are for cases, cases dealing with young people who have reached the age of 17 and a half and are still in care and don't have a plan of permanency of going back home. And that's a difficult task for us and for them, more importantly. And we have built a whole set of case managers around that group of kids, because we know that we have to do better by them and help them achieve permanent families or connections somehow in their life. And we do things like, actually, it's I reported, didn't even think about this till right now. In May, I reported on this program that we have, which is really one of a kind in the nation, at the White House. And so we were honored, the state was, for DCS to appear there and report to other child welfare leaders about our collaborative care program.
Go ahead.
There's turn. Judge, and if you'd like to get back to me at a later time, that's fine, but when on the CHINS cases, could you, what's the department's policy on those so-called CHINS 6 cases, those children who are a danger to themselves or to others? It just seems like, anecdotally, without getting into any confidential situations, I occasionally get calls as a legislator, maybe more as an attorney, from parents who are just, they're not abusive, not neglectful. In fact, they've tried a whole host of things, and yet they find themselves in a situation where they think their child is a danger to himself or to herself, whatever the case may be. What does the department, are those being filed, and what's the status on those, if you can comment?
So what I hear your question is, in my mind, two things, and hopefully I can answer it for you. Yes, we can file them. We haven't filed any since I've been director. There's no policy not to. There's a couple of counties where the prosecutor has in fact filed them, and for some reason the judge didn't go forward with it. It's just my personal opinion that after doing it for 31 years, that there's a better way to doing it than filing a CHINS 6 petition. And that would be to file a CHINS 1 petition. If the parents really want the coercive intervention of the court, we can file it under the CHINS 1 statute and unsubstantiate against the parents. Yeah, and so that's kind of the best kept secret in a way, because that's how we always did it in Lake County, because understand the dynamics of a CHINS 6. When you have a CHINS 6, you have to have a child come to court and admit or deny to the judge that they have certain issues. Well, to me, that's kind of traumatic to say, well, Johnny, are you, doing this? Sometimes they don't even know. If they have mental illness, they're not going to really know what their condition is and if they're a danger to themselves or others. So you're really pitting the child against the parent, and it's just not, I think, in the child's best interest. So I prefer a CHINS 1, and when I've had prosecutors or people in counties, we've talked through it in some kind of way, they come around and say, yeah, that's a better way, not recognizing, like you just did, that they didn't even know that you could unsubstantiate against the parents under a CHINS 1 petition. And so that's how I prefer it. Secondly, when we have parents that have children that they are trying to get help for, that they have exhausted all their resources and ideas, we have the Children's Mental Health Initiative, which is new. We rolled it out last maybe January of 2014, in all 92 counties, wherein the child will be evaluated by the local, it's an access site we have in each county, and they determine what services need to be provided for the child. The parents are in agreement We have even placed up almost 60 children in care, in residential care in that program. We've had about 800 kids go through the program to get outpatient or in-home services, and there's no coercive intervention of the court. The only time that would turn into a chintz petition is if the parents stop, voluntarily getting help for the child, and the child still needs the help. So we have those two programs. Oh, well, the Chin 6 we can do, but the Child's Mental Health Initiative is really good in that it's life-changing for children and families. We don't have to file a chintz petition or a delinquency petition for them to get help anymore, which, is a stigma to some families and children. It's kind of like a black mark against them. And so where in those cases where we don't have to do that, the Children's Mental Health Initiative is probably the way to go, and it's available in every county. Does that answer your question?
That's very helpful, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Just following up a little bit, as you put into alternate kind of therapy is what you're talking about, but they're still included in the statistics that you're citing here of ongoing cases. Would that be
The Children's
correct?
Mental Health Initiative, no.
Okay, so they're not. They're an assessment, and then they would be dropped from an ongoing case?
Well,
I mean, I'm kind of looking
Yeah,
at
yeah.
that.
The Children's Mental Health Initiative kind of takes a different route. So when the call comes in and our hotline recognizes that this is a family who's exasperated, it's not an abuse or neglect issue. It's really kind of a family crisis. So we do a family evaluation to see what kind of services the family needs. And then they are referred to the local access sites. We no longer take part in it. They will have a wraparound case manager from that local mental health facility that will then walk them through that process. And then we have someone in our agency that kind of watches it to make sure that kids just aren't in placement forever. We don't ever want that to happen, but that they're moving along, parents are still involved. But there is no coercive intervention of the court, and there's no case filed. So that is not in the 18,000. Does that-
Representative Klinker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Bonaventura and Ms. Tolliver, thank you for all the hard work you're doing. This is a tough issue now, and it's increasing, I know. Your specialized recruiter, he or she, is that person located?
Doris, do you?
He is a state personnel department employee that
State
is
personnel?
solely dedicated to the Department of Child Services. He's based out of Indianapolis, but he is charged with traveling the state, meeting with management, field management for DCS to identify the competencies for an effective family case manager, and then targeting recruitment efforts toward
And
that.
how long has he been employed?
He just hired on in July of this year.
July. And what is his name? It's okay.
I'll have to send
I'll
that
get it
to
later.
you.
Let me ask you about the turnover. Many of us know people who have been family case managers.
Sure.
Bless their hearts. Sometimes they last 5 years, sometimes 2 or 3. I know the pressure is very serious for some of those folks. What is their starting pay now?
Our starting pay for family case managers in training is $33,748. After they graduate from training, their salary bumps up to $35,776.
Okay. And are you finding that your recruitment is working?
Yes, we are effectively being able to fill positions. What we're really focusing our attention on is retaining those folks once we hire
I
them.
was just going to say, is the turnover decreasing, and are you able to keep them?
Our turnover is stabilized at right around 20%,
20%.
right now, and we want to see improvement in that, particularly because we're making a significant investment in our resources. I will say that, one of the things that we've tried to do is to really look at what other states are doing, what other states look like, so that we can sort of benchmark what is reasonable turnover in child welfare. Indiana actually, even at 20%, does very well compared to other states with respect to turnover. But we want to be better. We want our workers to have the supports that they need to do this work for the long haul. So we're continuing to invest efforts in that.
Well, I appreciate that because I'm getting calls about young people wanting to do this.
And we want them.
So that, I think that's a real positive sign.
Good, thank you.
Senator Kenley.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mary Beth and Doris, thank you and thanks to all the people that are working with you in the department for kind of your all-hands-on-deck approach to this. I'm sure you didn't know it'd be quite like this when you took the job, but we're very fortunate that with your prior experience and sort of the whole spectrum picture that you've developed over your career, that we can take advantage of that. And I appreciate the fact that the governor has been extremely responsive, at least twice now, about responses for funds and calls for studies and things like that. I think he's making every effort to stay on top of this. And this summary we've been talking about this for several years, and the number of caseworkers that we have is enormously larger than it was 10 years ago. And we still are not sure that we've satisfied all the needs. So it's quite a challenge. And I think I really appreciate everything that you're doing, and I think you've tried to take every issue that's come to our attention and actually addressed it in this report. So all I can say is keep going, and thanks for being willing to kind of be as open about your situation as you are. Obviously, it would be easy to say it's so terrible you don't want to know about it all, but we appreciate your efforts.
Well, see, I come from the school of like misery loves company. So I want you, I don't look at it as my deal. I look at it as our deal because they're our kids. And so I want to share that with you.
Just a little bit on top of everything else. We had a couple of occurrences, a couple of situations where there appears to be an enhancement of certain types of drug usage across different populations in the state. And I'm sure that this is playing into the number of people and children that are being impacted by this, which falls directly in your lap. So I think the legislature, as long as we understand what's going on, and as long as we feel like the efforts are being made at the level they are, we're going to be supportive for you.
And I feel that support, and I really feel, lucky to be able to, brag about the fact that this legislature and this governor really believes in this mission that we're charged with. And so I'm grateful that you're our partners in it. And we talk about the cause all the time, the reason for the 26% increase. I mean, personally, I think that in no small way is it because of drugs. But then, you'll be at a scene of something happening, let's say domestic violence, and then, to capture exactly what it is sometimes is very difficult. So 2 examples I can think of is you're at a domestic violence situation, people get arrested, they don't, no one's taking drug tests, and then a day or 2 passes, and then they're drug tested. And certain kinds of drugs, as Dr. Brown knows, leaves your system pretty quickly. And so that's not good. Or on the other side, we'll have a baby born drug exposed. So we know that baby's got issues, but then all the other kids are removed too, but it doesn't show that they're being removed for drug exposure. They're being removed for life and health endangerment. So that it's captured that way. And so it's just mind-boggling because I know, Judge Morris would sit here and tell you, like she knows that the majority is because of drugs, but we know that really anecdotally, and really trying to capture it is really the trick, and we're trying.
I think Representative Gooden has a question, and then I know if you want to continue on.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. Appreciate your drive and wanting to try to help these kids. I'm not trying to rain on the parade here, but as we move forward, I know we're going to talk about attrition, bringing new people on this. And I think I read where you're going to be hiring 100 new on top of the ones you had before. But I guess my first question is how many people are leaving the system? And then the number of people that are leaving the system, are you able to replace those people? So if you hire 100, but 120 left, you're still down 20. So I haven't heard that kind of information. So.
Okay. Well, we know that and I'm going to let Doris, because she was our HR director, so she knows a lot more about this, but I think we have our turnover rate is about 20% right now. Today, we have 2,063 family case manager positions. We have 1,546 of them have caseloads. We have 189 that are in training, and we have 45 vacancies. 45 vacancies out of 2,063 is really good. I mean, we don't want any, but when I got here, about 2 years, and you all know this, that we always had about 100 vacancies. We couldn't get past that. And so the work that this agency has done along with SPD is that, we're double filling. When people give us notice they're leaving, we're already filling that position. Our goal is to double fill when they're coming through so that we don't ever have, that we'll have somebody always to put in place, because our training is 12 weeks, which, by the way, is a nationally renowned training program. And I'm trying to get my little digs in there everywhere I can. So I think that, yeah, we're going to have attrition, and some of it is healthy, I think. Some of it isn't. But I think at 20%, we're still pretty good. I want Doris to go ahead.
So one of the things that we started doing early this year, even before we had the Deloitte recommendations, is staffing not just to the current vacancies that we have, but to the turnover rate that we have at that point in time. So that we are identifying, let's say we have one vacancy, we're identifying 2 people to fill, recognizing that there is, in the next 12 weeks, we are likely to lose someone, while we're still working to address getting our turnover down as low as possible. So that's how we were able to fill our existing vacancies to a great degree, as well as fill those new 100 family case manager positions. We have to continue to essentially staff up in order to be able to ensure that we have enough bodies that are getting through training timely to fill vacancies as they're occurring.
Thank you. And I know some of the folks that I've spoken with, the attrition rate's pretty high, and I think if you look at the years' experience, maybe some of the questions you have folks that's worked there for 7, 8, 9 years. They started out at 30,000, now they're making 32,000. I think the pay scale and the pay itself is probably, if you do a survey on those folks who are exiting your area there, I would say probably pay is the highest of all those. Maybe in second is burnout. I don't have those stats in front of me, and I don't know if you do that or not, but if you keep those numbers. So, I mean, you're talking about a world-renowned training program, which is awesome. I love it when Indiana's #1 in something, and we've been a little bit short in the last basketball, NCAA basketball championships lately, but as we move forward, the amount of money that it costs to train these people, and then once they leave, and then you've got to retrain those folks. If pay is a problem, would it not be beneficial to look at maybe increasing that pay therefore you're not trying to retrain all these folks and you're not losing all that money? I mean, training is expensive in everything. It's expensive when you train new teachers and the whole works. So I think there should be there's probably a middle ground there, that increase in pay versus the cost of training. And I don't think you folks are there yet. And I know you're working on situations and incidents. And as we move forward with the caseloads, you talked about in the 19 different regions that there's only so many people you feel comfortable with the number of people that you still need to hire, and you're doing better and all that. And that's great, but only one of your regions out of the 19 met their criterion and in what you consider to be safe level. So 1 out of 19, it's not that good. But I'm not trying to be critical at all. I'm just pointing out the obvious. So I think there's some really major issues when we talk about personnel and individuals and trying to move those people forward and then moving the agency forward. And I think some of those issues I just spoke about probably need to be addressed.
Let's let you go ahead. I think you have some of that information in some of the following slides, but you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So if you look at slide 10, it will show you that in 2013, the DCS added 136 new family case manager positions and 75 supervisor positions. In fiscal year 14, we added 110 additional family case manager positions. In 2015, the legislature appropriated funding for 100 new family case managers and 17 family case manager supervisors. And all of the positions, the new ones that were just given us in this year's legislative session, have all been hired. And so, but at the end of all that, I'm going to let Doris talk about our case load methodology and why it is we're adding more. Go ahead, Doris.
So we've talked a little bit about where we are with respect to meeting the 12 and 17 standard. Just for kind of level setting, wanted to recap what our caseload methodology includes. As you all may recall, we have a 12 and 17 standard. The 12 references new assessments or investigations of allegations of abuse or neglect. The 17 speaks to children that are monitored and supervised in ongoing cases. The 12 and 17 standard was adopted largely from the Child Welfare League of America's recommendations that spoke to a 12 and 17 standard. However, Indiana has taken a much more conservative approach with respect to the 17 ongoing cases in that we count children, not families. In terms of the weighting, all of our cases are weighted at 100% with the exception of children that are placed in residential placements because of the fact that they receive a lot of supervision in those placements. Those cases are weighted at 50% of a CHINS case. There are lots of variation nationwide with respect to what is the right caseload for a family case manager. We've looked at in sort of scanning the nation with respect to that. We also called on Deloitte to look at. There's not a consistent standard. As I mentioned, even the 12 and 17, depending on how you define the 12 or the 17, the calculations may look a little bit different. The director already spoke about where we were with respect to staffing at the year end state fiscal year 2015. We had 2,063 total FCM positions, which includes the specialized functions of family case managers that support the hotline as well as foster care. We have had a total of 1,546 field family case manager positions. So those are family case managers who are carrying our ongoing and cases as well as our assessments. We had 189 field FCMs who were in training and then 45 vacant field family case manager positions.
So again, at the end of June 30th, only one of our 19 regions met the 12 and 17 caseload standard. That would be our central office region, which handles our institutional units and the complaints about abuse and neglect in those units, and our collaborative care program. 3 regions. Do they have they have this, right? Oh, she didn't hand it out. Okay. So 3 regions of the state are within 90% of necessary staffing levels to meet the 12 and 17. And statewide staffing levels was at 82% need. To meet 12 and 17 DCS, after doing the calculation that Doris talked about, we need additional 113 family case managers statewide. And there's a team of people that meet weekly to talk about the need in each of those counties and regions to make sure that the staffing that is coming on is, well, actually we hire them for those regions. So when they come out of training, they're already with a caseload and with a mentor and go out into the field in each of their counties. So as we sit here today, 113 family case manager positions statewide have already been created by the State Personnel Department. That was done by close of business yesterday after the governor's announcement. And we intend to hopefully begin that hiring process as soon as we can identify qualified candidates. At the next slide, 14 shows that in 13 counties, we are at 100% staffed, and we're, good there. In 16 counties, we're at 90 to 99% staffed, and you can read the rest, 29, 80 to 89, and 18 counties, 70 to 79%. In 9 counties, 60 to 69%, and 7 counties are 59% or below. And frankly, in several counties, 48 to be exact, if we hired 1 or 2 family case managers, we would be in compliance. So in some of the small counties where there might be 4 family case managers, if 1 leaves, they're way out of compliance. If we add that 1 back in, we are. And I saw the 2 of you speaking while Doris was talking about Indiana taking that, counting children instead of cases, which the Child Welfare League of America told us to do. And really, if I did that today, we would be in compliance, probably in every county, maybe not Marion, but every place else. But that, in my mind, it is just, I can't do that. I mean, the standard that we chose in 2007 was that of counting children and not families. As an example, somebody yesterday said that they had 30 children on their caseload when they should have had 17. And so I went through the calculation, and really this person had 12 families, which means that she would be getting 5 more if we used the CWLA standard. Yeah, because, so anyway, because one family had, 5 children, one had 4, and, and so on and so forth. So, okay. So as I said, the 113 family case manager positions have already been created, and we will deploy those staff members once they've been trained into the local offices. We will continue to monitor who's coming through the door and at what rates, and hopefully if we can stem that tide through prevention, programs that many other agencies besides our agency also do, that we'll be able to get these numbers to come down, and who knows, maybe next year I'll be reporting that we have to lay people off. Wow. Wouldn't that be good? Well, maybe.
Wow, I don't
Yeah.
Well, because I guess my comment, it seems like it's always a moving target.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, because you're exactly right. We could have maybe a third of our clients or people in jail not using drugs anymore and have
Exactly.
Successful outcomes and that type of treatment, and we would have a decrease.
That's
Or
right.
we could see another 10 or 20% increase, and then we would have a direct relationship rise in cases coming to your hotline.
Exactly.
So it is a moving target.
It is.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you very much for
Thank you.
allowing
I
us to
appreciate the
appear.
hard work, and I know it is
Thank you.
very stressful out there.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have Indiana Department of Transportation. We have Miss England, but I believe there's a couple other people that are gonna come down. You can come down at the same time, too. We have Mr. Plunkett and Mr. Alden. So, but we'll have Miss England go first. But we're gonna, I've asked Alan and Bob to come in case there are questions about transportation in this area of the state.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask an obvious question right off the
Okay,
bat? Specifically of Mr. Alderman?
okay.
When is the, when is the I-65 bridge gonna be open there between Lafayette and Indiana?
We're gonna have Miss England first, and then we're gonna, I knew the question would be there, okay. So who's your state?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and other members of the committee. My name is Katie England, and I am the Director of Multimodal Planning and Programs with INDOT. And we are here today to request approval to fund the operation of the Hoosier State Passenger Rail Line. The Hoosier State operates 4 round trips weekly between Indianapolis and Chicago. The service was Amtrak supported until September 2013, when federal legislation ended financial support for routes less than 750 miles. Since then, INDOT has provided funding to Amtrak to operate the service. Earlier this month, we transitioned from Amtrak only to a state-supported service with Amtrak, as well as a private vendor, Iowa Pacific Holdings, Inc. Iowa Pacific provides the locomotives, newly renovated historical cars, marketing, and onboard services. The ghosts again in the room. Food and drink, as well as Wi-Fi. Amtrak provides the crews, reservations, and ticketing, and manages the relationships with the host railroads. The services and cars that Iowa Pacific provides are a significant upgrade from the services and cars that Amtrak provided. We expect an increase in ridership as well as an improvement in on-time performance, but this will take some time. We are the first state in the nation to contract with a vendor other than Amtrak on a state-supported route. The Federal Railroad Administration is the federal regulatory body over the service, and we work closely with them to ensure all operational and safety requirements are met. INDOT's contribution to Amtrak and Iowa Pacific is capped at $3,054,331 per fiscal year, payable collectively to both vendors. While our total fiscal obligation is known, The amount payable to either vendor individually is variable and will be based on monthly financial performance. Amtrak will bill us on a monthly basis for their costs, and we will either pay or invoice Iowa Pacific, depending on whether total revenue has exceeded total expenses for the month. If costs to Amtrak increase due to unscheduled mechanical repairs, our payment to Iowa Pacific would be decreased proportionally. 25% of the revenues that exceed Iowa Pacific's costs in a month will be returned to INDOT. Our estimated total monthly payment in the beginning is $254,528. In addition, several local partners have agreed to contribute to the operation of the service, including the cities of Crawfordsville, West Lafayette, and Rensselaer, as well as Tippecanoe County, and we are very thankful for their support and participation. INDOT has a team of staff involved in the management of the Hoosier State, including a dedicated contract manager, as well as finance, operations, and legal staff. We will soon be contracting with a mechanical consultant, and we are creating financial templates to manage the monthly reconciliation that's going to be required, and that will start up in September. This will also support future reimbursement requests. The biennium budget provides for reimbursement to INDOT of up to $6 million from the tax amnesty program should it be available. We are very excited to be in the passenger rail business officially here at INDOT, and we are looking forward to what the future may hold. So we thank you for your consideration and support of the Hoosier State. And if there's any questions on the Hoosier State, I'll be happy to entertain them, or I can just turn it over to Bob.
Thank you. So this is a 2-year contract, and then is there option for another 2 years or option beyond that? Or what will happen in 2 years? Will we go through the same consternation next budget cycle?
There's an option to extend the contract, but I believe that only goes until January of 2018, which would be 5 or 6 months after it expires. And as you know, this last contract did go through one short-term extension and one long-term extension and several other short-term extensions. It's kind of impossible to tell what will happen again in the future. We sort of feel like we got through the hard part this time. Mm-hmm. So we hope for a smoother ride next time with our contract negotiations.
Has the contractor talked about pro forma of where they expect to be on ridership, both kind of short-term and over the life of the contract? Are there pro forma numbers?
Not exact numbers at this time because we're in the process of adding additional cars. And until we add those cars as well as a new class of ticket, a business class.
You're substituting out cars, or you're gonna make the train longer? Train that's not full is gonna get longer?
Right now, we only have 2 cars running.
Okay.
And those 2 cars hold about, I think, 88 seats. And it did sell out on the first day of service last week, and it's been pretty full since then. The Dome car, which offers food and beverage service, right now you can buy a ticket on any of the other 2 cars, and you can go check out the Dome car. That's where business class will be sold. So there's technically 3 cars right now. We're looking at adding a 4th by the holiday season.
Okay, further questions? So I'm gonna have to eat some of my words I said earlier, right, Senator Hirschman?
You know, I haven't hold you accountable yet.
I'm more than happy to eat them if the future holds brightness. Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Ms. England? Transitioning to the topic du jour, I knew there were going to be questions. So anything you want to say about the transportation situation in West Central Indiana? Because it seems like every state route has a construction spot on it.
Probably, I would think, Mr. Chairman, if I may, the interest today would be in the I-65 bridge over Wildcat Creek. And if I can kind of walk you through before you have questions, so you have some cursory understanding of what took place with the bridge. The bridge was in our program for rehabilitation. It was combined with the added capacity project that's going on out there now. Approximately a week ago, as a contractor was driving new support piles for the added capacity of the project. At about 80 feet, he penetrated a artesian well that was under pressure. He's driving this H-beam, and let me give you just a slight understanding of the soil. The top layer of the soil there, and it's a reasonably thick layer of soil, is called a hard-till loam. Under that, and that's a good stable soil. Under that is a layer of sand. You know, this is hundreds of thousands of years old. We knew of the artesian well there. The contractors made aware of it also. But as they drive this H-beam for support into the soil, it penetrated this artesian well. Because it was under pressure, it immediately started pumping water up through the track of the rail. That heavy packed sand bed immediately started to erode. It was the easiest thing to penetrate for the water. As it eroded that sand layer, it created a large void under the loam soil level. That large void destabilized the existing supports for the bridge. And at that point, obviously, we closed the road. Where are we going to from here? I understand an announcement will be made this afternoon that tentatively they believe they have a fix for the bridge. I'll let that announcement serve itself. I'm sure you all will get it. 4 to 6 weeks is what we're estimating. It could be a little shorter. It should not be longer than 6 weeks. We have a large number of geotech people from around the state, NDOT, and consultants who are working on the fix and analyzing it. You know, this is a difficult situation when you have an underground void that weakens the other structures. I think they've worked with Federal Highway also, and I believe they are going to come through with a fix, and they'll move forward with a fix. It was a horrible time to happen at Thursday afternoon, Friday, when everyone's traveling the highway, and there's no easy way out. But the bottom line is public safety is a paramount issue for us, and recognizing the traffic difficulty that would take place and the confusion in the beginning with the detours and such, trying to get those in place, but shutting that traffic down right now once we knew there was a problem. It was difficult for everybody. I can imagine that Senator Hirschman, Representative Klinker, the folks from this area probably got a lot of calls. But we did the right thing, and we'll continue to do the right thing. And I'll be more than happy to try to answer any questions you have about the project.
Thank you. I appreciate it. The information of a geologic description was quite apt, I think. Very good, even for...
You'd be surprised what I've learned on this job.
Those of us that are in the state of Indiana are pretty lucky because some of us know some of the back roads, 52 and 28 and so on. But I think probably some of your biggest issues will be some of the folks coming back to Purdue University. So I appreciate the fact that you are working diligently to get that repaired. Thank you very much.
Yes, we did have a meeting yesterday with Purdue about
Great.
The kids come back and also maybe into the football season.
Yeah.
Push 'em.
Thank you.
Yeah, we met yesterday with Purdue and also the day before about football. So
That's great too. Thank you.
Representative Gooden, any follow-up?
No, I was being facetious, but I appreciate the detail in explaining that. And Bob, I will echo your sentiments about how much you've learned just being at NDOT. I've learned a lot as well, just being in the General Assembly. So.
See, I've also learned a lot more about you guys by being in the General Assembly. If I might offer, so you all know that I share your pain, I certainly thought of this situation as I sat for 2 hours on I-64 just east of Evansville. I was about to get there an hour early for one of your members.
Same here.
with an issue that he had, and a truck got on fire about a half mile ahead of me. The people worrying about the truck exploding bailed out, which caused a propane tanker, and if you know 64, you know it's probably 70% trucks going from St. Louis, Cincinnati, and Louisville. A car hit at the rear of this propane truck. Luckily, it didn't light it up, but all of this herbicide ended up on the road, and they had to remediate it before they would reopen the highway. So I sat out there and complained about those highway people.
I tried to get the Evans vote too.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you, and I do appreciate you coming to inform us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. I was very reluctant to serve in the role that I'm in now, but I've grown to appreciate the opportunity to work with all of you. And look forward to go forward.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Item number 6, Medicaid State Plan Amendments.
That's right.
Joe Mosier.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have 2 items to present to the committee today. These are items that Medicaid has submitted to the federal government for approval to modify our Medicaid program. The first is in regards to legislation that was passed in the most recent legislative session authored by Representative Martin Carball. It is a bill that would require us to disregard spousal assets for the Medicaid eligibility for individuals who own a long-term care partnership policy. Long-term care partnership policies are long-term care insurance products that are work like long-term care insurance. They pay for nursing home bills. Once they're exhausted, the individuals qualify for Medicaid, and we disregard their assets that they have. Otherwise, Medicaid does consider the assets of individuals for Medicaid eligibility. Previous to this legislation passing, Indiana was counting.
I think that's for Bob Cherry. He's the former ghost of this.
Okay. Medicaid was counting the assets of the spouse when considering the eligibility for the individuals who have these policies. This legislation required us to disregard the spouse's assets as well, which will essentially allow a few more individuals to qualify for Medicaid. We estimate that the cost of the Medicaid coverage for those individuals will be about $320,000 a year in total additional cost to the state. The federal government pays a portion of that, so the actual state cost would be roughly $110,000. This legislation was not anticipated when we presented the Medicaid forecast to the committee and established the Medicaid budget, so this would be in addition to the forecast, but we think it can be assumed in the regular Medicaid budget. Any questions about that one?
Yeah, Joe, this presumes that there are people out here that have this product. Do we know how many people have this product?
Yes, the program is actually administered by the Indiana Department of Insurance, IDOI. They did present those numbers to me when this bill was under consideration. I don't recall them off the top of my head. I think 64 individuals in the state have one of these policies.
We have 2 different ways to asset disregard. We have dollar for dollar long-term care coverage as well as a total asset disregard if you purchase a certain length. We also, for this fiscal year, those 64 people would have to all, would it be an actuarially amount that would become Medicaid eligible, or would this happen, would we spend $100,000 if all 64?
Well, this is only for new applicants, so this would modify our policy going forward. It doesn't affect those who are already in the program.
Okay. Okay. Any further questions? Okay.
Okay, the second item is in regards to the Health Indiana Plan Employer Link program. This is an optional component of the Healthy Indiana plan that we implemented earlier this year. It allows individuals to take a defined contribution of HIP dollars and buy into their employer insurance if they have employer insurance offered to them. And this state plan amendment would allow the state to use those employer benefits for the coverage that's provided through the HIP Link program. It was part of the entire HIP package that we have previously presented to the committee, so there's no additional fiscal to the HIP Links state plan amendment.
Senator Kinley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This isn't really directed at Joe. It might be Budget Director Bailey had addressed more correctly to you, but I've been getting since in recent months, I'm getting individual inquiries from constituents about some of the programs under the federal, and it may involve Medicare instead of Medicaid programs where people are pretty disconcerted. They've got a parent in a hospital. They're not able to bring the parent home when the parent is requesting the ability to do that and get some treatment type things. And the question that it raises in my mind is that I feel that this enormous change that was implemented by this law that was passed in Congress kind of on a expedited basis without a chance to really fix it, improve it, or debate it, or it was a kind of just kind of a push through deal. And I think there are beginning to be a lot of things that are coming to light that are really, it's not just a question of political policy as to what you think the government should or shouldn't do. It's almost a point of where people are being harmed by the methodologies that we have in delivery of healthcare services. I think it's impacting how insurance companies behave, the rates they charge, doctors and hospitals and everybody else. And you were successful in getting a waiver for the HIP 2.0 plan, so you're kind of getting into the mix now as an administration. And I just wonder if the administration, in an effort to prepare for the obvious fallout of the future, if everybody thinks the system is completely falling apart, I wonder if you shouldn't, I would just make a request maybe that the governor's cabinet think about the idea of beginning to collect information on problem spots in the system, what kind of things should be solutions. I mean, maybe Congress will do something like say, let's go to a block grant program and let the states try to deliver a lot of these services, and even if we're not an advocate for the state running the show and would rather just have a free market exercise, maybe the states could do better. So I kind of think that I hope that your administration will begin to, you might say, think about where you might go with that someday and what the problem, at least identify the problem so you can say, here's a problem, here's a problem, here's a problem. And that I know the meeting's dragging on, Mr. Chairman, but I just think sometimes this is the forum to discuss a few of those things, and I just kind of hope you all will take that. You don't have to respond at all, just a thought for you.
Thank you. And I think along that, yeah, there are a lot of constituents and actually people working in the field that think there needs to be some discussion about the Affordable Care Act and changes. Right. Any further comments, Joe?
No, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That concludes our review items. We now go to the discussion items. What I want to do for the discussion items, this committee is really not a policy committee. We don't have preliminary drafts, we don't have legislation, and we don't necessarily set up testimony for policy items. But there are going to be some review items that come before this committee in the future, and I think we need to have some background information for that. And that's why the discussion items will be presented in this fashion for the committee to have some background information Both the budget agency and the chairman of the committee will decide in the future whether these items come to be on the review agenda or not. And to have this background information is very important for that. So with that, we're going to go to the first item that was moved from the agency projects to number 1, discussion items. And that's item number 3, Department of Administration.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. My name is John Hill. I am the Governor's Deputy Chief of Staff for Public Safety and coordinate the public safety efforts in the executive branch of government. Just by way of background, I wanted you to, since some of you don't know me, I served 30 years here in the state police and various ranks and capacities, and then I was very fortunate to go to work in Washington, D.C. for President Bush. And while there, though I was primarily in a highway safety mode, because of the security issues that came up, in my law enforcement background, I got thrust into a lot of security-related matters at D.C. at pretty significant levels that were frankly a little bit of a surprise to me. And I learned a lot about security-related matters while I was there and watched some of the transformation of how they changed the federal campuses and made them more secure. With that in mind, I just wanted to tell you a little bit of a background about why we had proposed in this budget some security improvements for the Indiana Government Center campus. This all really started as a result of the Counterterrorism Security Council meetings, which is a state statute provided group of people to oversee the security-related matters in the state of Indiana. It's chaired by the Lieutenant Governor, and back in 2007, they made a series of recommendations about improving the security on campus. One of the things that happened as a result of that was the installation of checkpoints for public people accessing the buildings, and we did that both at the Government Center North, Government Center South, and at the State House. What happened as a result of that is they made a series of recommendations, and in 2009, 2010, there was additional work done by a group of people to identify additional work that really didn't get accomplished with the first phase back in 2007. And one of the things that they recommended was we really need to tighten up the way people access the buildings, because it's quite frequently the case that an employee will scan their credential. Otherwise, the public can't get in unless they go through a public access point, but they'll follow someone who is credentialed into the building, and then we have a compromised security environment, potentially. And this has been fairly rampant since 2007, 2008, 10, and so it was a recommendation in the 2010 report that was updated. As a result of that, for whatever reason, I wasn't here then, but at that time, the funding was denied, and it didn't move forward. And so in this biennium, we did add the security upgrade based upon the analysis that was done back in 2009, 2010. So that was the reason for the presentation, and I will tell the committee that it's a little bit difficult to talk about security in an open environment, especially when you're on the internet and you don't want to talk about too many vulnerabilities. But you also need to understand that I attend biweekly intelligence briefings that are classified. I have to go into a secure facility to get that information. And I can tell you there are people in the state that we need to be concerned about, and we need to be sure about our security of our buildings. Back in 2013, December, we had a well-intentioned employee let some people into the State House. We later found them. They had stolen numerous items out of various offices in the State House. They had stashed them over at the mall there at the Circle Center, and we arrested them, but they gained access because of an employee let them in, because they basically lied and said that their parents were in there working and they were trying to be nice and help the kids get in. Well, they were stealing from us. So that was one example of access that was compromised. Fortunately, it didn't turn into anything violent. The second illustration I would give you is that back in 2014, we had report of a disgruntled employee who was coming to the campus, said they were going to be armed, and we had pictures of them, and someone had spotted that individual allegedly, and so we had a major concern about the security of our employees in the building. And so as a result of that, we tried to make a public address announcement to tell employees how to shelter in place and what kind of instructions that they should follow. And we found that the PA systems are not linked. They're all individual, and it's very difficult to get out an urgent message, whether it's for an impending tornado or whether it's actually an active shooter. So one of the things that we did, apart from the technological piece of this, is Superintendent Carter with the state police has taken a lot of time to invest in active shooter training, and he's done this with both the judiciary, the legislative branches, and the executive branch agencies. And we're committed to continuing that, but those are examples of things that we're trying to do to try to shore up any kind of deficiencies in our security posture. So I just mentioned those things because, as you know, back in the fall of 2014, terrorists attacked the Canadian Parliament in Ottawa, and fortunately they were able to stop the shooter before it got out of hand, but it could have been very serious. There were a series of other attacks throughout the country and that were, a lot of people don't know, but they were prevented by law enforcement and good work by FBI and local police. And then ISIS began this encouragement to spawn lone wolf attacks here in the United States. And we are quite concerned about that. And while we don't have a specific threat, the media keeps pointing where are the threats, and we have to be delicate about what we talk about, but I can tell you that there are young people who are being inspired by foreign terrorists to do these kind of things. And so with that in mind, my job is to look at the security posture, and we believe that one of the things that we could do is just shore up some of the access points in the government center campus, and that was the reason why there was $1.2 million submitted in the budget. And I think that the legislature approved $873,000 the first year, and then there would be the remainder of the $1.2 million that would be in the second part of the biennium. So with that in mind, I just wanted you to have some background and some orientation for why this was done and the historical perspective on it. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to take them. And Jason Larison, our state architect, has been working with a lot of the agencies that are currently trying to solidify the best solution for our security plan here in the Government Center campus. Do you want to say anything?
I'm going to interrupt for just a minute. I have taken things not parliamentary proper, so we're going to go back because I'm supposed to vote on the agenda before we get to the discussion items. Is that okay with members? So are there any motions or discussion to remove items from the agenda of the review and agency and university projects? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll continue, thank you, we'll continue on with discussion. And I think one of the key things this is, you know, the security issues have been a combined committee of judicial, legislative, and administrative over the years. But again, as you said, the historical perspective that there was a long series of recommendations, and we did very few around 2009, 2010 time period. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think 2007 is when they actually implemented the checkpoints, and then 2009 and 10, this further recommendation came to do some of these access points and try to limit the way people get in and out. And that's the part that was not acted upon. And then this public address system thing as well was also a part of that 2009, 2010. And then also, Mr. Chairman, in 2013, Superintendent Carter sent another group of people out to do an assessment just to do some work in looking at what we currently have, and those same recommendations came forward as a result of that upgraded evaluation in 2013.
Senator Kembley.
Thank you. John, I think I was one of those who is a little uneasy with this that is being presented. One of the reasons why I'm a little uneasy is that as we beef up the security checkpoints at the entrance points to a fairly historic and nice-looking building, it has the ability to begin to detract from the building in that way, and I wasn't confident that I had any assurance that those issues had been taken into account, and you don't have to respond to that today, but all I could see was, and then based on the description that I saw here, it says the proposed entry doors will incorporate a turnstile door that allows only one individual through at a time. So my immediate thought was, well, they're disconcerted by the fact that on that north door, when everybody pours in and out of the State House, on those heavy hours of the day, because people are sort of outside the inside door when they're flashing that badge, they don't know whether or not it's one or more than one. And so if you put a turnstile up there and then you decide that you don't have to man that station, then the guy you're talking about is just going to jump the turnstile and keep going. And so I wasn't sure if you were doing anything except harassing the regular employees with that effort, okay?
Sure.
And then finally, we're kind of unique in that the legislature and the courts and the executive branch, all three live in that building. And the feedback I got from members of my caucus pretty immediately was one of resistance and unhappiness about this. And so it led me to wonder if the legislative side of the House or the judicial side of the House had an opportunity to really review in detail the kind of plans that we have here. So that was another concern. And then lastly, this looks to me like a beginning step, and more will have to be done. In other words, it doesn't say that you're going to have personnel at the door, yes or no. And if they are there, don't they have to have tables and things to operate off of and ways to manage their situation? So we're talking about more than just putting up a turnstile at the north door. And so I was just struggling with all of these things, and I felt like I didn't really know a lot about it. And so I think, you say, well, we could talk to you, but if we talk to you, then we're giving the ideas to the bad guy. So the inference is we're just supposed to rubber stamp what you say is the right security procedure. And I'm a little uncomfortable with that suggestion.
Go ahead.
Again, my name is Jason Larson. I'm state architect with the Department of Administration. And Senator Kenley, those are all very, very valid and understandable points. And I can address, I think, all four of them. To begin with, I think part of the misunderstanding is probably some poor choice of verbiage. When we started to pull together the numbers for adding additional security to the doors at the State House, the North Building, and the South Building at the Government Center, it was based around turnstile numbers. Now, keep in mind, turnstiles is actually a very, very broad term, and I just remembered that I wasn't supposed to use the term, but it's out there anyway. A lot of people think of the same things that you use at stadiums, that they're mostly there for doing head counts. But actually, there are a number of security products out there that look like glass revolving doors that provide that same sort of security without the ability to jump over. In locations where you have a large number of employees coming in, they have actually optical solutions. There's no actual physical barrier. You walk through one at a time, you wave your badge, and it gives a beep. All of these options require various levels of personnel and supervision, but they're all intended to help the personnel, the people that are keeping an eye on things, understand if that person that just came through is actually supposed to be there. So with that in mind, I can say that we don't have a solution that fits into all the doors. Each entryway is an individual case based on the number of people that come in on a daily basis. I work in Government Center South, and there are dozens of doors, exterior doors, and each one has various volumes. And when we look at the solutions, we will address each one individually. Part of the funding that we're talking about is to hire the appropriate consultants, in particular credentialed physical security professionals who will come in and meet with all the parties that are involved. And that will include executive branch employees, legislative branch, judicial branch. We want to make sure that everything that we do will maintain everyone's ability to still continue to do their work and improve on the security for the facility. With the State House specifically, we are governed by law that any modifications we make to the State House has to go before the State Historic Preservation Committee that's housed in DNR. I can tell you that the wooden historic doors that you see on the outside, we are not touching those. Everything that we will do will be done inside of those doors in a controlled vestibule or whatever solution we find, and they will be adapted to meet up with the historic fabric of the State House. We've actually have done similar things in the past to do modifications and upgrades to the State House and other historic structures. And that's how we'll address it in this particular way. So again, it's all of those issues are on the table. We have not gone through and created a solution. There's a broad number of opportunities out there, and we will continue to
Well, let me
discuss.
respond, Jason.
Yes, sir.
It says the proposed entry doors will incorporate a turnstile door. Now, whether you're replacing those other doors or just adding to them, that is a very specific decision that apparently has already been made. And I think my problem is, if it's already been made, then I don't think everybody that uses the building has had an opportunity to weigh in on that. Now, taking into account the need for the security issues that John has presented, which I take seriously and I agree with, I think I would feel much better. And then another part says, this project is part of a larger initiative, which says to me that there's more going on here and more needs to be done and maybe more money needs to be spent. I would be much more comfortable, and I'm not trying to make too much of this, but the State House is the only one we have. And so, and it's a sad state of affairs that we can't just let people walk in and out of there anymore. But I would be much more comfortable if I knew that the judiciary had assigned somebody to work on this and they reviewed a tangible plan that they could see on paper, and that the legislature had a committee that you might even have a classified approach to this of, this is confidential, you're the committee that's supposed to review it, it's supposed to be kept private because we don't want abusers of a system to have access to all this information. And then they kind of agreed to it. And then after you'd done those things, if you came in here and said, give us $5 million, put up a security system everybody agreed to, I'd just vote yes, okay? But that's not what we see here.
I agree, Senator. It's poor wording on our part.
Well,
We,
I'm not blaming you, but I just think, and I hate to be an obstructionist at this point in time, but I think now's the time to step up and say, isn't there a better way to do this that we'll all feel comfortable that we've done the security thing correctly, and also make sure that everybody's kind of on board with it? I'm just making that kind of an observation.
Well, Senator Kinley, I want to respond to you about there's no intent here to have another $3.5 million ask. That's not what, we're talking about improvements to Robert Orr Drive, for example. That is a part of this overall security posture. And so it's not a part of this funding mechanism, but it is a part of that security evaluation, because I think there's a vulnerability there. That's the kind of, when we talk about overall security plan, that's kind of what I'm talking about here. I'm not intending to come back to you and say, well, didn't quite have all of this down. And then the second piece of that is the Counterterrorism Security Council does have representatives from the judiciary, Judge Najam, and Representative Soliday is the House member, and Senator Yoder has just joined to take over Senator Weiss's place. But I will make sure that they are much more engaged on this, and we'll make sure that they are included in those discussions. Sure.
Representative Klinker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Many of us have lots of students that
Yes.
come, as many of you know, classrooms. How would you handle the situation, is it turnstile or some other situation, when you have large classrooms coming to see the State House for the first time and react to different areas that we certainly include them in?
They will continue to be dealt with the same way. In other words, they'll come through the public screening area as they are now. And the turnstiles are really just designed for employee ingress and egress to make sure that we control who comes in and out of those public, or the employee entrances. That's what this is all about. And I would say to you that my experience would be, to Senator Kenley's earlier comment, it's during high volume times, you must have somebody there to man those turnstiles. If there's a malfunction or some kind of a backup, you can't keep people waiting. So you've got to have somebody there. But it's not like you're having a person sit there for 10 hours a day and paying them overtime rates because you don't know who could come through the door, or somebody at all may not come through the door. And so we're spending a lot of money for people to sit there to keep people out, but I think there are some technological solutions that could save the state some money.
So it's mainly employee-driven, not
That's
your
right.
students coming through?
Yes, the public
the
will
door.
still come in the public entrances as they have in the past.
Thank you.
Yes.
Further questions? Again, I think this is very, very useful information, and part of it is to continue to have discussions as we need to move this forward as a review item. And I know part of the issue is timing and anything. We're not scheduled to meet again as a budget committee until October, so that does put a 2-month different window on it. But I think for everybody to stay informed and be updated, we'll work with the time we have.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I would tell you also, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Kennelly's follow-up, the Department of Homeland Security at the federal level assigns to every state someone called a Federal Protective Security Advisor, and their job is to go out and help both major private industry and state government identify security weaknesses. We plug that person in. They've been working with us, and so we're utilizing resources that we can. We're not just going to expect some private consultant to tell us what to do. We're using security professionals that exist now and models that already exist in the federal system. Okay?
Appreciate it.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it. Very helpful information. Next, we'll go to the next item as a discussion item. And again, the spirit and tenor that we have, this is background information for a decision to be done, whether it'll be a review item in the future. We have Steve Bushman and the ISP Alliance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Steve Bushman with the Indiana State Police Alliance. The State Police Alliance is a voluntary membership organization. We have over 1,100 troopers who have voluntarily joined, and we do what we can to support them. Met with probably most of you last session on state police pay issues. As you know, I've been with these guys more than 20 years, and what we have found is the state police will start falling behind in pay. The General Assembly will come in, they'll catch them up, we'll wait a number of years, and it happens again. This has kind of been our history. The last major kick was passed in 2007, applied 2008, 2009. Unfortunately, since that time, while we have a matrix, we have fallen behind again. 20-year troop who got a big pay raise back then is making more than $200 less net pay today than he was in 2009. Cost of health insurance. You know, his pay is frozen, health insurance goes up. Even the guys in the matrix that were getting annual increases are breaking even. We took a look and met with a lot of you. We compare, look at other local police agencies. We look at surrounding state police agencies. They've been going up. We've been falling behind. So what we have found, we've talked with the recruiters from the department. They are having trouble recruiting the brightest and the best, which we believe is what you want in your state police department. And unfortunately, we are losing people to some other departments. We ran a quick survey of our membership. We hear a lot of rumors. You don't want me to talk about rumors. We have confirmed 15 of our troopers applying to local police departments. 3 of them have already been hired. We do know that IMPD has approved hiring 155 new police officers. They are in the process of setting up a lateral transfer program. Since their third-year policeman makes more than our 20-year trooper, unfortunately, we expect a few of our guys to go into that process as well, maybe a bunch of them. We are really appreciative that, you are looking at a study. Obviously, when we talked to a number of people, they said it isn't just pay, it's everything, and so we appreciate that you are looking at everything. We've seen a lot of the benefits that many local departments have and some other states have that, quite frankly, we don't get, that adds to their pay. And we think that this study will, unfortunately, maybe make it look even worse, but it's a good study. I do want to make just one comment on a benefit and then 2 other quick things because you've been here a long time and you don't want to listen to me for 20 minutes. One benefit we do have that a number of departments have, some have more restricted, is take-home cars. Because I think in talking with about all of you, that came up, well, our guys can take cars home, they can use them in state. And that is a benefit, but it comes with a burden. And I want to make sure you're aware of that. While our troopers take their cars home and can use them in state, it is a department policy that if you are in your car off duty and you see an incident where the citizens of the state would expect a trooper to stop, you stop. You are not given comp time, you are not paid extra, but you do your job. In recent years, troopers have been asked to report these off-duty incidents. Didn't do that for years, but we have recently. In 2014, troopers reported 5,709 off-duty incidents where they stopped, helped citizens, or did their job without extra pay and without comp time. There were 332 tickets, 176 warnings, 2,817 police services. That's seeing somebody with a flat tire on the interstate, we stop and help them. 303 crash reports, 15 criminal arrests, 6 OWIs, 885 assists. That's where we stop and assist a local police agency who may be on the scene, and 1,175 others. This year, so far through the end of July, it's 2,947. So while the take-home card is a benefit to us, it is also a huge benefit to the state of Indiana because essentially they're having all those troopers on patrol for free and providing these services for free. 2 quick things and I'm done. There are 2, I gave you a large packet of materials. Director Bailey asked us to gather information from surrounding states. I'm obviously not going through that. But what I do want to say is we were able to gather this information in something less than a week. We know you're doing a study. We want to make sure you understand we will be a resource. Any help we can provide, any calls we can make, any contacts we can use to get information to the budget agency or to Mercer to assist in the study, please call us. We'll do that. We also attached, unfortunately, a study Louisiana did nationwide. Why I say unfortunately is when you look at your copy of the study, you will find the even numbered pages. We will provide you a copy that also has the or excuse me, you have the odd numbered pages that has the even numbered pages as well. There's nothing about the air pressure of footballs in there. This is something we want you to know about. So we will email copies of the full report to you. But what Louisiana tried to do is look at what state police departments all over the state, and when you look, unfortunately, Indiana doesn't rate very high. The last thing is we provided a copy of a Missouri statute because, as I said, unfortunately, we just keep, get a hit, wait a bunch of years, get a hit, wait a bunch of years. What Missouri does that we would hope might be considered here is the superintendent of the state police department is required annually to compare the compensation for the department to the compensation of the largest 3 metropolitan departments in the state of Missouri. Not an automatic pay raise, but keeps it in everybody's mind so that we're not waiting 7 years like we did this time. Be glad to answer any questions anybody may have, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you and to participate in this. This is very important to our guys.
Only us budgie numbers people are going to go through this probably without falling asleep. So, questions for Steve about background information. Director Bailey.
Mr. Bushman, were you able to find the compensation, like total compensation for the surrounding states that includes health care benefits, pension benefits, and other benefits?
What we have a lot of it in here. Yeah, I mean, we can get some more detail as you go, but yeah, what you will see, we provided literally deals with most of this. It's real hard when you're dealing with health insurance to say what's the quality of the program. But what we can do is look and see what do we have to pay for it. And you're going to be all over the board. We looked at, for example, Kentucky is in the Social Security system. No, I don't think any of the others are. We're not. We don't get Social Security. All we get is our pension. Our pension contribution is 6%. Michigan, I think, is 4%. So again, a lot of that is in the materials I provided to you. And our thought is that as the budget agency and Mercer look at this, if there are more specifics we did this in a week. But more specific questions, and we saw the list of questions, we're more than glad to use our resources to help get you those answers. Makes it for a valid study.
And I think, just follow up with what Director Bailey, maybe another piece of information might be turnover rates in these states that you're bringing to us to see if maybe our turnover is higher, maybe our turnover is the same, or turnover is lower. For some reason, there's job satisfaction here also. So turnover rates, the different states might.
We will ask that. I mean, what we have found from our guys is they are incredibly loyal. They're incredibly loyal to the state. Sometimes family considerations, unfortunately, overrule their ability to have a career with the state police department. We're not interested in guys who want to sell insurance. We're interested in guys who want to be career law enforcement officers, making sure they can do that with the Indiana State Police Department.
Senator Kinley.
Thanks for the information, Stephen. I know that you and your guys will really work to get us the facts so that we can try to make a good evaluation. I think it's a good sign that we were able to just pass something in the last session without having a full-blown debate, discussion, and all negotiation and all that stuff. I mean, that showed an intent on our part to try to be responsive. So that's a start,
And we're very appreciative.
It seems like perhaps one place, there may be some ways that we can skin the cat that don't end up looking like or feeling like they cost the state a lot of money. And one of those might be a review of the overtime pay policy and that uncompensated time. And you alluded to the take-home car situation, which might be considered part of that. So if you have some thoughts or some knowledge about some of those little wrinkles and twists that go towards making people feel like they're at least being fairly treated, whether or not they get a lot more pay, it would be helpful for you to keep bringing that information through Chairman Brown to us, okay?
What has happened in the department prior to July 1 of this year, we didn't pay overtime. Our guys, if they worked over, now remember, these off-duty hours aren't paid at all. But for our guys who did work overtime, they were given comp time. Starting July 1 this year, for the very first time, They are starting to pay, there is some money that is available to pay overtime to the troopers who are working extra hours. Obviously, we have guys who have accrued massive amounts of comp time that's sitting on the books. I'm not sure there's any way you can burn it all, because if you're using that much comp time, they got to bring somebody else in to work your shift. So, that may be an issue, maybe addressing that built-up pile of comp time that these guys have accrued.
And that, not only does that deal with the money, but it also deals with the, gee, now I feel like I'm being treated more fairly, part of it.
Representative Gooden.
As part of that study, would you guys mind to add in that the entry-level education requirement also?
Okay. And I do know, I think in some of the more recent recruit classes, they've cut back. We have required more in prior years, but when you're not getting enough good people who are putting their name in, you cut back on what you're asking for people who submit. And I can get that. I do know that our recruitment officers would be more than willing to participate or answer any questions you may have too.
I do want to add, for the Budget Committee, we've been tasked by the Legislative Commission to do a summer study on state police pay and how it compares to surrounding states and other municipalities. We've engaged Mercer with the help of Indiana State Police, State Personnel Department, to help gather that data and to help gather both the salary data and other compensation and other fringe benefit data so that we have a full and complete picture of what the compensation's like comparatively. And we wanted to invite Steve and the State Police Alliance here today to help give us some data as well.
Any further questions or comments? Is there anybody in the audience who wanted to give us factual background information related to the Indiana State Police pay matrix? Seeing none, we're going to go to the next item and Department of Workforce Development. Mr. Richardson and Mr. Note.
Chairman Brown, I think I can officially say good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen of the Budget Committee, thank you for having us here today. My name is Bill Nanti, and I am the Chief of Staff and Chief Financial Officer at the Department of Workforce Development. And with me today is the Deputy Commissioner of Unemployment Insurance, Josh Richardson. We certainly, again, would like to thank you for allowing us to come up here, to get up early today to see the sunrise, to travel some back roads here to Lafayette that we had not ever seen before. And also, for me personally, as an IU graduate, to allow me to come back to one of my favorite state universities here in Indiana. So I want to thank you very much for that. Seriously, we know what we're talking about here today is a very important subject, the possible early payoff of the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. Our team at the Department of Workforce Development has tried to, as Chairman Brown has indicated, just assemble some information for you to go through, kind of what the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund is, where we have been with it, where we are now, and possibly a couple of scenarios that we might see going forward. So with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Josh Richardson to go through it. And of course, if you all have any questions afterwards, we'd be more than happy to answer them for you. So, Josh?
All right, thank you. I think I'm on here. So we will move through these quickly, but please do ask questions if you have them. Hopefully my clicker will work here. And to get started, I just wanted to show this historical picture on the graph here, just to remind you of where we've been. So our Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, funded by employer premiums on tax that's assessed on employment. The trust fund was on the uptick from 1993 until 2001, where some legislative changes were made to benefit amounts and to the way the revenues were collected, and really started our trust fund on a path from 2001 through 2011, where we paid out more in benefits each and every year than we received in employer premiums. So many of you that were here around that time remember that this wasn't really a recession-caused problem. Borrowing was going to occur no matter what. The recession obviously caused sort of the bottom to fall out, as this was. And you see there right at the end of 2008 where we started borrowing from the federal government, which we'll cover a little more later. Legislative changes were made in 2011, a comprehensive package on trust fund financing in the unemployment insurance system was implemented then, and you can see us start to climb back. 2011 was, I believe, the first year that we collected more in premiums than we paid out in benefits in more than a decade, and you can see that we're on the upward tick since then and climbing back out of this hole. So just to give you the overview, because I think it's an important primer to understand the discussion that we're about ready to have on credit reductions. The way that this system works is at the federal level, there is a FUTA tax, and the FUTA tax is a 6% tax on the first $7,000 of wages paid to an employee in a calendar year. Against that 6% tax, so long as a state has a conforming law, conforming is the term that we use, so long as we have a conforming law, our employers receive a credit against that tax of 5.4%. So that making the effective FUTA tax rate 0.6%. You'll remember that our state taxable wage base is $9,500, but the federal tax base is this $7,000. So this money, and not to be confused with what we'll talk about here in a moment, this money goes to the federal government, and it is, among other things, granted back out to states to administer their state unemployment compensation program. So my salary, the salary of my staff, the funding for my division of workforce development is all paid through this federal grant that comes out of this money. So what we're talking about today, though, is what happens when a state faces the situation like we started to face in 2008, 2009, and that is that when a state has insufficient funds to pay unemployment benefits out of its own trust fund, there is a process set up under federal law where we take an advance from a state or from the federal unemployment account. And so that's a process that we began to use right there at the beginning of the recession, at the end of 2008. So we take an advance at that point or a loan. And on that advance, one thing that happens is immediately interest is essentially assessed on that loan. Right now, our rate is about 2.34% that we pay on that. But in addition, and more relevant to today's discussion, after the second, or really after the sort of the third year where you are using an advance, there kicks in what is basically a default federal mechanism to repay this advance. So what they do is they start to reduce that 5.4% credit that we get against the 6% tax by 0.3% a year. And that money is used, it's applied directly to sort of what you would think of as the principal on our advance. So it's not a dead weight loss. It doesn't go to the federal government into a general fund or otherwise. It is applied to our outstanding advance. And some states who have struggled to reach any sort of agreement to fix their own state funding structures will pay back federal advances solely through those credit reductions. You'll also hear this called a FUTA credit penalty. Essentially, takes the form of this credit reduction. And so we've got a slide up here that just shows the chart historically of this sort of increasing 3% credit reduction that takes place over time. So this is above and beyond that federal administrative grant, which would be paid regardless. And so you'll see this chart here, and this always gets slightly confusing. You may have seen this displayed two different ways. It is the amount that we would project to pay in 2016 under current projections is based on 2015 taxable wages. It's a little easier to talk about it in the year that it's paid. So these payments are made in January of the year following. And that is what is on the horizon under current projections. And so we'll take a look here at the next sheet. Here's the trust fund balance over time. And so the way that this chart works, because it has a tendency to catch people off guard if they don't see this, if we don't walk through this, but you've got your premiums received and your benefits paid. And then that third column there I think is important because it's showing you our the structural, the state-based premiums versus the benefits that are paid out and the difference between there. So you can see we've run, somewhere between $200 and $300 million surplus, essentially, in terms of those premiums collected as opposed to benefits paid since the legislative changes. Then you'll see that fund balance. Well, because these food to credit reductions are right now being used to help pay down this advance, you have to add to our fund balance and that food to penalty each year. And that's where you end up getting this total adjusted fund balance. So the actual fund balance over these years really is best looked at on that right-hand column. What is relevant to today's discussion as we're talking about this is that it is anticipated that at the end of this year, the state will still have an advance of approximately $245 million. And because of that advance, because of this federal trigger for food to credit reductions, we would anticipate that in January of 2016, since this loan hadn't been paid off, basically Indiana employers, that 1.8% food to credit reduction would result in an additional $320 to $330 million in food to credit reduction payments. And so this has prompted some interest and some talk about this question of, well, what if this amount were paid off in November? And so we've run through that. We've got a timeline here later. But here's a slide for you about basically what happens to the previous chart. If such an advance were made from other state sources to the trust fund, and basically then at the end of this year, we'd be looking at essentially just paying off that advance. There wouldn't be more money than that, and that would eliminate that food to credit reduction that would cost the state $320 million in the near future. So, that's sort of the bulk of what we're here to talk about. There are obviously a lot of different pieces that are in here. And some of these slides we may have to have Joe help move back forward through as we respond to your questions. But there are a couple important things to point out here. Because the way unemployment insurance tax works, because the assessment is on the first $9,500 of wages paid, we collect the vast majority of those revenues to the trust fund in the first quarter, after the first quarter of each year. So those are due within 30 days after the end of the quarter. We typically see those coming in at the very beginning of May. So they're due at the end of April. Those checks start clearing into the trust fund at the beginning of May. So about 57% of our revenue over the last 4 quarters has come in the first quarter. And so that is relevant to paying back any advance to the trust fund. And so there are a couple of dates here to keep in mind, the timeline for you. The question of whether Indiana employers will be responsible for this food to credit reduction in January 2016 is, do we still have an advance on, it's actually sort of the morning of November 10th. So we use this November 9th date. If we were to pay off that federal advance by November 10th, there would be no food to credit reduction for Indiana employers payable in January of 2016. However, the January 1st date is also relevant because what it does is essentially reset the clock on these food to credit reductions. So paying it off by November 10th, but failing to have it continue to be paid off by January 1st would result in employers not paying in January of 2016. But should the fund borrow again that year, some unforeseen economic circumstance, that credit reduction would go all the way to 2.1% in the following year. So really this November 9th date, the January 1st date, both important dates for purposes of paying off the advance. Now, the difference in our projections between those two dates is very minimal. Generally, that quarter is sort of a break-even quarter in terms of revenue we bring in versus benefits we pay out. So it's unlikely that there's much deviation there. There's that chance that I think that we should talk about that, you could potentially be a little short on January 1st minimally. And then by May of that following year, there would be sufficient revenues to the state trust fund to repay any advance made from elsewhere. So really we're talking about sort of under at least this option, sort of a short-term loan within the fiscal year that could eliminate this $320 $30 million food credit reduction on Indiana employers. And just to walk through again how that math works, yes, Senator Kinley.
But really, the actual amount that the employers would save under this plan is the $82 million differential.
Well, so Senator Kinley, I think that, I mean, what's important here is that you're talking about without adjusting state rates, right? So the employers would essentially pay the same state rates. They would avoid this $320 million payment. Now, where that math works out is that the fund itself then doesn't get that $320 to $30 million. But employers would save that whole amount. So they would avoid paying the $320 million.
Pay the state back the $245 million advance, though, that would be deducted from the 300. That would be, that would be deducted from the 327 million if they had to pay it back. And I've always been thinking of this in terms of the employer paying that back, and I think the governor has also spoken in those terms. So the real savings to the employer is the difference between 327 and 245.
So I still see it otherwise, Senator Kinley, but I think this is worth discussing because I think certainly important that folks understand. So right now, Indiana employers they would be paying at what is Schedule E on our state premium rate. There could be one solution to this that says, well, they'll continue to pay at Schedule E, but the state could raise additional revenue from them, to the tune of $250 million to pay back. What we're talking about instead is using those first quarter receivables for the regular trust fund premiums and using that money, basically saying instead of going into the trust fund, that money then would be used to pay back wherever this advance came from. So employers, they're not going to be paying an additional $250 million. Now the fund would not get that money. The $250 million would basically come out of the trust fund.
So they would then continue the first quarter and you would use that money to pay back.
Correct.
So then what that does is it slows down how you build a balance for your future. And so the next question on my mind is, how big of a balance should we build up in order to protect against getting in this position again in the future? According to your earlier chart, it looks like $2 billion is about the right number, or $1.5 billion or something like that. And so that would require some policy decision on our part that, number one, we actually do want to build a balance back up. And then number two, we'll have to pick the right rate schedule to get us there. And picking the right rate schedule involves somewhat of a forecast about how many claims you're going to have and how the economy is going to hold up. And I mean, we're kind of at a pretty low point on unemployment right now. So I think it would be hard for me to go around this room and find somebody that wants to bet me that unemployment's going to be less in 3 years or 2 years than it is today. So don't all those factors enter into this policy decision in the end?
I think absolutely they factor into the policy decision.
What are the, I'm not asking, I want to put you on the spot by saying what is the right number for the surplus balance, but do you know what other states have done or are doing historically that are responsible in their financial management to produce a balance in this? And could you come back to us? You don't have to physically come back, but could you supply the chairman with some records that show what other states are doing and what is an appropriate balance?
And that's absolutely information that we can get, and states really are all over the board on both the way that they finance their state system as well as what they see as appropriate balances. But, a couple of points about that I think, again, are worthwhile to talk about in this discussion is that, that's right. It is important to know that just having paid off this advance doesn't mean that we have a healthy trust fund. And I think that certainly as this continues to move on, There's going to have to continue to be a discussion about what that number is and how we get there. But I think there are a couple of things that are really important to remember. And one is that we now have a structurally balanced fund. So since the 2011 legislative changes, this fund has brought in more money each year than it has paid out in benefits. So it's on its way there. So it's both a question of how much and how fast we need to get there. And so absolutely those are relevant. But the other thing is that I think there's an important thing to remember here, that it's almost because of that uncertainty as to where unemployment could go in the future. Certainly if the forecast holds up, then we're on our way towards not just a solvent fund, but a healthy fund. But the other piece about this is, should there be a year where we have a heavy benefit payment, as Senator Kinley you alluded to, what we want to be sure of is that we're out from under these food to credit reductions when that happens. So really resetting this clock on these food to credit reductions, I think there may be enough in there to be worthwhile, even if you knew that something were on the horizon where this fund was going to pay out a heavy year. Again, getting rid of those food to credit reductions is incredibly important because, as I said, if we fail to do that and there was some sort of a downturn as soon as next year, then you move to this 2.1, 2.4% credit reduction, which would be incredibly harmful at a time where the economy was constricting anyways.
And I think I want to just follow up a couple points. I mean, many states, I shouldn't say every state, but many states had to go borrow from the federal government when we hit the recession of 2009, 2010. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so Indiana was not alone in any of this scenario of what happened. And I think additionally, other states have looked at different creative ways to get away from the feud to penalty, because a lot of states have taken personal bonds or state bonds to pay off the feud to penalty because they thought they got a lower rate than the rate the federal government was charging on interest. Is that not correct?
That was the theory, yes.
How many states have done that? Any?
The bond level,
because I know Illinois is an example.
Pennsylvania, Illinois, Idaho took a very small one. I think that there may be a list of as many as 8 or 9 states that, at least at some point, Texas essentially is always funding theirs through a bond. They very rarely build a balance there, and so these are all. This is all information that we can provide. But Indiana didn't go that route. The interest rates have stayed relatively low. And I think that, at least from the agency's perspective, I think it ended up being the right call.
And when the legislation was changed in 2011, to get out from under this feud to penalty wasn't projected until 2017, 2018.
Yeah,
Is
really
that
2018
correct?
at that time, yeah.
And so if we did nothing, we would be doing it in 2017 start, because we pay it off next year.
Correct.
And so 2017. So we're trying to push that clock 2 years, where our historical analysis, we actually pushed the clock 1 year.
So to be clear, if we follow the projection that we showed earlier, there's no advance made, then that's right. It's those first quarter receipts in 2016, so May of 2016, where that balance would be pushed to the positive, which would mean that we'd be paid off in November of 2016, avoiding a food to credit reduction in the following year if things go as planned. So yeah, I mean, from the projections, we were all the way out at 2018, and yeah, now we're talking late 2015 instead.
And I think one of the key features is resetting the clock, because if another slight downturn happens, we start the 3-year cycle before the penalties kick in related to this.
And I think that's the agency's perspective on this as well. I mean, essentially the strongest argument not to do this is the one that Senator Kinley says certainly ought to be considered, and that is, how fast do we want to build this up? We don't know what's coming in the future. But I think this is one of these unique situations where that also may be the best argument to go ahead and do this, because getting out from under these food to credit reductions, I think there's a real sort of avoiding risk here in taking that approach. And so I think that it makes this a little bit more of an attractive option.
Because the worst case scenario is we have a downturn the second half this year, first half of next year, and then we create feud to penalties increases on top of feud to penalties increases.
Exactly.
Okay. Director Bailey.
Josh, I had a question about the authority to use the UI trust fund to repay a general fund loan. If the state determines that the most cost-effective thing to do is to pay off the FUTA penalty balance, do we have authority to then go ahead and have the UI trust fund repay the general fund?
And so, absolutely, this is something we're going to need to continue to work on as time goes forward. So the general rule, we talked about conformity early on. The general rule is that states can only use their trust fund to pay benefits. I think that, since you guys are around budgeting, you realize why states, and there have been times in the past where states have attempted to use a trust fund to prop up a general fund or otherwise. And so the general rule is that you can only use this fund to pay benefits. However, the DOL interpretation of this is so long as the money that comes into the fund in the form of a loan is explicitly a loan at the time that it is made, it is permissible to use trust fund revenues to pay that loan back. So we absolutely want to make sure that we sort of do the necessary background work here to make sure that it is expressly a loan. But so long as it is, we wouldn't have any trouble with this. And in fact, that interpretation came out in response to state bonding, I believe in early 2000s or maybe in the 90s, and they wanted to make sure that states could use that revenue stream to pay other. So we wouldn't be able to pay interest with trust fund revenues, but we can pay the principal of a loan that was made to the fund.
Bill, any further comment? No, Chairman. Questions or comments? Thank you. Again, since this is background informational, any further people want to give information? Bethany, please come forward. Again, we're sticking mainly to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Budget Committee. My name is Bethany Goswer. I am the Member Support Manager in Indiana for the National Federation of Independent Business. I'm here representing our State Director, Barbara Quant, who is getting married tomorrow, and so she couldn't join us today. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I will try to keep my comments as brief as possible. NFIB is a nonprofit, partisan organization with 350,000 small business members across the country. We are the largest organization in the nation representing small business. In Indiana, as in the nation as a whole, small firms lead the way in employment and job creation. 99% of all businesses in Indiana employ fewer than 100 workers, and small businesses create almost 80% of the new jobs in the state. NFIB supports the effort to pay off the federal unemployment loan this year. We see this as a significant effort that will improve the state economy, and we commend you for considering the proposal. The reasons for taking this important step are myriad. The FUTA tax penalty is particularly burdensome to small businesses because they are most sensitive to changes in tax policy and are the least able to absorb the skyrocketing costs. In spite of the efforts of DWD and organizations like NFIB to inform employers of the penalty and the reason for it, many small businesses are still surprised by the tax notice when they receive it. The bills arrive at the 1st of January and are due at the end of that month, and these bills arrive at the worst time of the year for most small businesses. The first quarter is the slowest for the majority of Hoosier businesses, and the negative impact of this tax is significant. The timing for small employers is particularly burdensome if they are surprised by the penalty. Hiring stops and expansion plans are put on hold. Also, this tax is not experience rated. The Indiana Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund is experience rated for regular premiums, so businesses that don't lay off and don't use the system pay a lower rate. With the FUTA tax, all the businesses pay the same rate whether they use the system or not. And since small businesses are less inclined to use the system for routine layoffs, the FUTA tax penalty is generally unfair to the smallest of businesses. Also, this proposal is not free money or a gift to employers. It's simply a loan that will be paid back within a few short months. This loan from the state to the unemployment fund will save hundreds of millions of dollars that will have gone to the federal government. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for economic development at no cost to the state. The savings gained from this thoughtful approach will allow small businesses to hire and grow instead of scrambling to pay a penalty that does nothing for anyone, least of all Hoosier workers. Additionally, we'd like to cite one real-world example. You may have heard about the recent closing of a small grocery chain with 4 stores in inner-city Indianapolis and the resulting food desert that was created by the loss of these stores. The 88 food stores were members of NFIB. The owner had contacted NFIB and complained that the food tax was presenting a significant hardship to the company. They had received another bill that totaled many thousands of dollars, and the owner wanted to understand why they were being hit with this penalty tax. It was hard to explain why small businesses like theirs may pay a penalty because the state had to borrow from the federal government. We are not asserting that this is the only reason that 88 was forced to close, but the food penalty most certainly did not help this small business stay in business. The economic climate for small businesses is still very tough. According to recent NFIB Small Business Economic Trends reports, the Small Business Optimism Index has just begun a slow climb from record lows and recession levels. The new jobs we need will come from Indiana's small businesses. According to the SBA, the most recent data available shows small businesses in this state employed 1.2 million workers and created the majority of net new jobs. The NFIB and its small business members urge you to continue to move forward with this thoughtful, common sense proposal. Indiana's job creators and the economy will be the better for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Bethany? Thank you. Further members of the audience, Bill.
I will be extremely brief. Yay. Bill Waltz with the Indiana Chamber. Yes, this is a very important issue. I was really glad to hear the discussion that Senator Kenley prompted. I'm just going to cut to it and say I think, yes, it's a timing issue, and I think the point in response that Mr. Richardson made to reset the clock is probably the most significant point, and so we would support that. Whether or not it's 82 million or 327, you know, there's a little bit of a, also, you can look at that bad word stimulus type to the economy in this coming calendar year. So we appreciate your consideration of the issue.
Thank you. Any further members of the public on issue related to the FUTA penalty? With that, you also have 2 reports in your packet, report items. And I believe we are done with our agenda, both review and discussion. Appreciate it very much. We don't have anything scheduled for September, but we'll be back together in October. Any further itinerary items, Deanna? No? Okay. Thank you. We are adjourned.